Warrior Lore. Chapter 820. However, just as that faint voice rang out, countless gazes seemed to have been electrocuted and their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Revered artifact. That name had not been mentioned in the Central Province for over 1,000 years. However, the name of revered artifact still resounded throughout the Central Province. The revered artifact's crafting technique was unparalleled in the Central Province. That was an unchangeable fact. Not many people knew about it. More importantly, ordinary artifact talisman masters, if they were not dual cultivators of the martial path and talisman path, their strength would definitely be ordinary. However, revered artifacts were different. Although they were only spirit talisman masters, their strength was still incomparably powerful. There were even rumors that the venerated weapon's strength was much stronger than that of cultivators of the same level. Only those who were in the same generation as revered artifacts knew how terrifying revered artifacts were. My master, revered artifact? He's the disciple of the palace master? Elder Zhu Xiu's body trembled as longing, hope, and anticipation surged out of his eyes. Revered artifact? Is he really the disciple of senior revered artifact? The cauldron-filling spirit array. That complete fusion of beast energy is most likely real, Guang Hongweng said in a trembling voice. Disciple of revered artifact, Elder Yun Ziqin, Elder Yin Xuanlong and the others looked at each other. Ko Jixiong and Qin Guan's expressions changed again as their complexions became more and more unsightly. Disciple of revered artifact. That boy is the disciple of revered artifact. No wonder his crafting skills are so terrifying. At that moment, Bailey Su was also stunned. Shang Guanhe's face was a bit stiff, as if he had yet to recover from the shock. However, at that moment, the mysterious black-robed man's cold gaze fiercely twitched. The two words revered artifact caused his heart to fiercely tremble. Qualifications? I think I have them. Right now, let me represent the Migres Palace to carry out the rules of the Myriad Artifact Assembly. After Du Xiaofu finished speaking, he stepped across the sky and a fist mark appeared in his hand. It was accompanied by a faintly discernible radiance as it spread out. The aura of that fist seemed gentle, but it was vast and boundless as it directly enveloped the mysterious black-robed man. However, Du Xiaofu was still only using the aura of a spirit talisman master. There were not too many traces of a martial cultivators. The black-robed man seemed to have felt the vast power brought about by that punch, and his expression changed greatly. He didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. The youth's speed was too fast, and he couldn't dodge in time. He formed a hand seal, and the shadow of an azure and white-scaled demon snake swept out. Chilala. However, in front of the dazzling fist mark, the shadow of the blue and white-scaled demonic snake collapsed inch by inch, unable to withstand a single blow. The fist mark continued to fall like a thunderbolt. How can he be so strong? For the first time, the mysterious black-robed man felt real fear. The mysterious young man before him was a real threat to him. Soon after, the extravagant black-robed man clenched his teeth and clashed with his fist. An aura of a 7-star talisman master of the Nirvana realm exploded. Shit, that black-robed man is a 7-star Permetha talisman master. Will that young man be able to resist him? At this moment, the expressions of Elder Zhu Xiu and the others changed drastically. Bang! A low and deep muffled sound was emitted from the point of collision between the two fists. Wave after wave of astonishing force waves overlapped one another. Like a shock wave, they ruthlessly struck the fist of the black-robed man. Chi-la-la, before the black-robed man could even react, his body was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. In midair, he violently spat out mouthfuls of blood. Rumble, dozens of feet away, the black-robed man's body smashed onto the ground of the square. He was drenched in blood and gravel shot out. Silence. The whole place was dead silent. The eyes of the judges were also dull. The black-robed man of the Nirvana realm, a 7-star talisman master of the Nirvana realm, was sent flying with a single blow and was severely injured. Is he really only at the complete 6-star cultivation? Elder Yin Xuanlong muttered in shock. His eyes were as dull as a wooden chicken. Ko Jixiong's eyes twitched fiercely. At this moment, he somewhat believed the words of his disciple, Qingguan. That kid did have the strength to kill Emperor Chu Jianghuang, but he did not see it clearly. The mysterious black-robed man spat out mouthfuls of blood. His eyes were filled with fear. After he fell, he climbed up and did not dare to stay any longer. He calmly used all his strength to escape across the sky. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu did not chase him at all. Instead, he smiled. In a short moment, just as Du Xiaofu smiled, the mysterious black-robed man who had just escaped across the sky suddenly turned around and looked at Du Xiaofu with fear in his eyes. It was as if he had seen a ghost. His pupils contracted as if he had seen a ghost. He said, "When did you do it, you?" Before he finished speaking, the mysterious black-robed man fell directly. His vitality disappeared instantly. He had actually died mysteriously. Looking at the scene in front of them, everyone felt like they were in a dream. The surroundings were silent. Everyone's eyes were dull, and they were dumbfounded. They were so shocked that they could not believe it. That mysterious black-robed man's primordial spirit was destroyed. Xiao Feng did it secretly. Elder Yin Xuanlong saw the clues and exclaimed, "What a powerful sneak attack! What a terrifying young man! I don't know his real age." Elder Yun Ziqin exclaimed, "That kid is too strong. He killed without leaving a trace." Weapon addict Guang Hongwang exclaimed, "To be able to kill a 7-star mysterious talisman master in one move, how terrifying was his strength." The most shocking thing was that the young man was only a perfect 6-star talisman master. His talent and strength were truly shocking. Weapon addict Lu Zhenghan's expression was complicated and twisted. He stared at the mysterious young man in the square, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. No one knew what he was thinking at this time. Du Xiaofu's figure landed beside the mysterious black-robed man. With a wave of his hand, several rays of silver light quietly disappeared into his palm. Then, he openly put away the mysterious black-robed man's Qinkuan bag. When he opened the black-robed man's hood, an old man who looked to be in his 50s appeared. Du Xiaofu was also very unfamiliar. He did not know who he was. However, at the back of the mysterious black-robed man's neck, Du Xiaofu accidentally found a lightning-like tattoo. Without paying too much attention, Du Xiaofu did not investigate further. He slowly raised his head, took a deep breath, and swept his gaze across the square. Then, he said, "This person is a 7-star mysterious talisman master." He suppressed his cultivation and caused trouble at the Myriad Weapons Convention. Moreover, he disobeyed the rules of the convention. He will be killed on the spot and will be fair and open to all weapon talisman masters. Good job, Weapon Emperor. Causing trouble at the Myriad Weapons Convention, he deserves to be killed. The crowd was stirred up and seething with excitement. Seeing that a 7-star Nirvana realm expert was killed in one move, everyone became more and more fanatical about the mysterious young man, Xiao Feng. "Hee, you say you are the disciple of Weapon Master. Do you think you are? It is the responsibility of us judges to maintain the fairness and openness of the Myriad Weapons Convention. I think you are the one who is causing trouble at the convention. Surrender." Suddenly, a cold voice came from the referee's seat. At the same time, a figure moved like lightning, turning into a flowing light shadow. He waved his hand and attacked Du Xiaofu with a claw print at a terrifying speed. Du Xiaofu suddenly raised his gaze, and a ray of light immediately gushed out from his eyes. However, at the same time, another voice sounded from the judges' seats. "Elder Ko, whether he is the palace master's disciple or not, my Migres Palace will naturally investigate. There is no need for Elder Ko to worry." At the same time, a figure followed behind Ko Jixiong, and a palm strike was sent towards Ko Jixiong. "Elder Zhu Xiu, what is the meaning of this?" The former was forced. Xiao Feng was right in front of him, but the palm strike behind him forced him to stop and turn around. He did not dare to touch it and could only dodge. Chi. The latter turned around and instantly landed in front of Du Xiaofu. It was the seemingly trembling elder Zhu Xiu, and the former was Ko Jixiong. Third young master, brother Xiao Feng. Almost at the same time, two martial emperors surged. Bailey Su and Shangguan He anxiously landed behind Du Xiaofu at the same time. 7-star mysterious spiritual talisman master. The king of weapons, Lu Zhenghan, looked at the current Bailey Su and felt that the aura on his body was about to collapse. Lu Zhenghan finally understood why that person who looked like a servant did not place him in his eyes at all on the way here. Now that he thought about it, Lu Zhenghan could not help but gasp. If the other party had really attacked him back then, he could only imagine what would happen next. A 7-star mysterious spiritual talisman master, and a martial emperor whose aura was close to the peak of the Nirvana realm. This caused Ko Jixiong's gaze to waver slightly. It's okay. Du Xiaofu nodded slightly at Shangguan He and Bailey Su. Looking at Ko Jixiong in front of him, his gaze did not waver much. At the beginning, Du Xiaofu really did not notice official Qin. However, when he knew that the elder of Yuheng Hall had appeared at the judge's seat, Du Xiaofu's gaze swept over carefully and discovered official Qin. Du Xiaofu did not think that official Qin could not see him. Therefore, there would definitely be trouble. The elder of Migres Hall must be abnormally strong. He most likely would not be able to fight head-on. In addition to the provocation of the mysterious black-robed man, Du Xiaofu used the secret weapon art and the spirit-filling formation in the secret weapon art. He was prepared to be recognized by the Migres Hall. Rather than being recognized, he might as well take the initiative to admit it. Although there would be a lot of trouble in the future, Du Xiaofu had been thinking. If he hid his identity, it would not be easy to go to Yuheng Hall to investigate the physical body of his master. Now that he had offended the people of Yuheng Hall, it would naturally be even more difficult. Therefore, he might as well take the initiative and cut the Gordian knot quickly. On the contrary, everything would be much simpler. With the identity of the disciple of the weapon master, Du Xiaofu estimated that even if there were people in Migres Hall who were suspicious and had other troubles, at least this name could allow Migres Hall to protect him and not be afraid of Yuheng Hall. Taking a step back, Du Xiaofu estimated that the identity of the disciple of the weapon master had already been spread. In Migres Hall, it would be much more convenient for him. Even if there were people in Migres Hall who wanted to do something to him, they would still have some scruples. Therefore, Du Xiaofu finally decided that he might as well not do anything and directly admit his identity, enter Migres Hall, and cut the Gordian knot. Chapter 821. Elder Ko, my meaning is clear. This is a matter of my Migres palace. There's no need for you to worry about it. Elder Zhu Xiu looked at Ko Jixiong, his gaze once again becoming calm. Ko Jixiong's gaze was dark as he looked at Elder Zhu Xiu and Du Xiaofu. He didn't pay too much attention to Shangguan He and Bailey Su. His eyes flickered, then he sneered and said to Elder Zhu Xiu, "All right, since this is a matter of your Migres palace, I won't bother. However, this kid killed my Yuheng Palace's enforcer. I've said that I'll settle the score with him after the Myriad Weapon Conference." Hearing this, Elder Zhu Xiu's expression changed slightly. He turned his head slightly to look at Du Xiaofu and said, "Little brother Xiaofeng, have you killed a Yuheng Palace's enforcer?" Du Xiaofu nodded and said to Elder Zhu Xiu that Yuheng Palace's enforcer wanted to kill me, but I killed him in the end. Xiaofeng, bullshit. I invited you to pick up a friend with good intentions, but you massacred the entire Chujiang royal residence. Enforcer Jiming was only trying to stop you, but you killed him mercilessly. You're the devil. Officer Qin flew up with a ferocious expression. The hatred for his father's death was irreconcilable. You failed to plot against me and my friend, yet you're talking about justice. I let you escape that day, but you won't have the chance next time. Du Xiaofu calmly looked at Officer Qin, but there was an indescribable coldness in his eyes. When he let Officer Qin leave that day, Du Xiaofu knew that he would be a problem in the future. You. Officer Qin's face was red with anger, his expression distorted. He opened his mouth wanting to say something, but he was interrupted by his master, Ko Jixiong, who looked at Elder Zhu Xiu and said, "Zhu Xiu, I want to bring Xiaofeng back to Yuheng Palace. Is that okay? He is related to my Migres Palace. He must stay in my Migres Palace." Elder Zhu Xiu said indifferently. Ko Jixiong's expression grew increasingly gloomy. His eyes that rippled with coldness contained quite a bit of threatening intent. He said, "Zhu Xiu, this person has killed the protector of my Yuheng Hall. Yuheng Hall will definitely not let this matter rest. Could it be that your Migres Hall wants to start a war with my Yuheng Hall? Zhu Xiu glanced at Ko Jixiang before turning to look at Du Xiaofu behind him. His towering and lofty body suddenly rose, his gaze suddenly sweeping the surroundings as his voice rang out, "Disciples of Migres Palace, heed my command. From now on, you may declare war on Alioth Palace at any time." "Yes, Elder." In the surrounding space, a large number of voices suddenly rang out, echoing in all directions of the square. "Zhu Xiu, you." Seeing all this, Ko Jixiang was so angry that his face was distorted, and the coldness in his eyes grew thicker. "Elder Zhu Xiu, Elder Ko, let's talk things over. The two of you, we're all on the same side. There's nothing that can't be resolved." Elder Yun Ziqin and Elder Yin Xuanlong floated in the air and landed beside Elder Zhu Xiu and Ko Jixiang. "Zhu Xiu, remember what you said today. You won't be able to protect this kid. In the 7-Palace Assembly in 2 months, your Migres Palace will be on your own," Ko Jixiang coldly said, coldly glaring at Du Xiaofu, before flicking his sleeves and leaving in a huff. Official Qin also fiercely glared at Du Xiaofu, before following his master Ko Jixiang as he turned and left. Swoosh swoosh, many people from Alioth Palace left with Ko Jixiang, disappearing into the air in the blink of an eye. Sigh. Watching Ko Jixiang leave, Elder Yin Xuanlong and Elder Yun Ziqin both sighed slightly. The myriad weapon assembly came to an end. After the final evaluation by several judges, the champion of this myriad weapon assembly was naturally Qiao Feng. The name of Weapon Emperor Qiao Feng also resounded throughout the place. As for the mysterious black-robed person, regardless of his qualifications or his broken practitioner weapon, he lost his qualifications in the end. Instead, Migres Palace's Yu Mingyuan was ranked second. Most of the top 10 rankings were still Migres Palace's disciples. No one was surprised by this. The most surprising thing was that this time, the mysterious youth called Qiao Feng was like a dark horse, soaring through the sky and resounding throughout the place with his prowess as a genius. His identity as the Weapon Sovereign's disciple also spread throughout Great Weapon City, causing the Migres Palace's disciples to discuss animatedly. Within Great Weapon City, in a large hall under Migres Palace's property, only Du Xiaofu and Elder Zhu Xiu were seated. "How can you prove that you're really the Palace Master's disciple?" Elder Zhu Xiu's towering body trembled, his eyes filled with excitement and anticipation. The Palace Master had disappeared for more than 1,000 years, and to him, it was only a rumor. He had never seen him before. With Elder's age of cultivation, I think even if I can prove it, I won't be able to tell. I think the complete secret soldier mantra is enough to prove it. Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Zhu Xiu. As the disciple of his master, the Weapon Sovereign, he naturally could not lower his status. He had long been the Alliance Master of the Heaven Alliance, the Emperor of the Desolate Country, cultivated the Golden-Winged Rock Mantra, and had various divine items on him. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's aura was extraordinary. The more Elder Zhu Xiu sized him up, the more he felt an indescribable vastness in his heart. "That's true. I have only cultivated for less than 200 years. Even if you are the Palace Master's disciple, it would be difficult for me to tell. Therefore, we should hurry back to Migres Palace. I have already sent the news back to the palace. When the time comes, the elders in the palace will confirm it together." Zhu Xiu nodded his head as he looked at the mysterious young man before him. Deep in his heart, he was inclined to believe that Lin Dong's attainments in crafting weapons was something that he was well aware of. If Lin Dong was not a true disciple of the Palace Master, how could he possess such attainments? Du Xiaofu nodded and did not have much opinion. After all, he was here to enter Migres Palace. It was good to enter openly. At dusk, a huge demonic beast soared into the sky and left Daki City. This time, the Sky Treasure Pavilion made the right bet. Brother Ruo Qiaofeng is really the Weapon Sovereign's disciple. The Sky Treasure Pavilion is very lucky. In Daki City, Shangguan he looked at the huge demonic beast that disappeared into the sky at dusk. His eyes revealed a slight smile. The huge flying demonic beast was a demonic beast that had reached the level of the heavenly beast list. Its cultivation level had reached the level of a beast king. On the back of the demonic beast, the surrounding air was whistling. On the back of the demonic beast, there were many young figures that looked imposing. Their bodies fluctuated with an aura that made one's soul overflow. These young men and women looked at each other, then at the figure in purple soft armor sitting cross-legged. Finally, their gazes all fell on a young man who looked to be about 22 or 23 years old. The young man's skin was not fair, but there was a touch of handsomeness in his delicate features. His eyes flickered with an ethereal light. It was Tao Yu, who had an amazing performance at the Myriad Weapon Convention but did not make it into the rankings in the end. Facing everyone's gazes, Tao Yu secretly took a deep breath. With a shake of his sleeve, he stood up slightly and took a few steps forward to Du Xiaofu's side. He cupped his fists and bowed, saying, "Greetings, young palace master." Du Xiaofu, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. The eyes under the mask were deep and clear. He raised his head and looked at Tao Yu, saying, "I have not seen the Migres Palace's confirmation. Isn't it a little too early to call me young palace master?" In Tao Yu's heart, you are undoubtedly the young palace master. Not to mention that you dared to go to the Migres Palace. The Migres Palace did not leave behind a complete copy of your secret soldier formula. Tao Yu looked at the young palace master in front of him. The depth in his eyes made him suddenly tremble, as if he had fallen into an endless starry sky. It was so vast that he could not see through it. "That's right. I don't need to prove anything. Your attainments in the secret soldier formula are extraordinary, but you don't know much about the secret soldier formula, right?" Du Xiaofu said with a smile. From Tao Yu's performance at the Myriad Weapon Convention, Du Xiaofu knew that Tao Yu was extraordinary. If he could improve on the secret soldier formula and the sacred body formula, he would definitely be able to improve greatly as well. Young Palace Master is very observant. If you don't know the secret soldier formula left behind by the Palace Master like the back of your hand, you won't know. Tao Yu was even more certain of the identity of the young Palace Master in front of him. He gritted his teeth slightly and said with a slight smile on his face, "Young Palace Master, actually, everyone wants to know where the Palace Master is now." Following Tao Yu's question, Elder Zhu Xiao and the experts of the Migres Palace not far away also looked at Du Xiaofu nervously. They wanted to know this question more than Tao Yu. "Actually, I don't know either. Master didn't tell me. He only told me to come to the Migres Palace and wait," Du Xiaofu said. Tao Yu was stunned. Then, he said with joy, "So, the Palace Master is still alive?" "Of course, Master is still alive." Du Xiaofu nodded and observed everyone's expressions. It seemed that the people of the Migres Palace had been looking for news of his master, the revered artifact, for more than 1,000 years. "So, you've seen the Palace Master with your own eyes?" Elder Zhu Xiao asked Du Xiaofu. On his aged face, there was some excitement in his eyes. "Of course," Du Xiaofu nodded. Seeing his master's primordial spirit with his own eyes meant that he had seen his master with his own eyes. An enormous and majestic mountain range stretched across the world. A burning aura spread through the air. This was the Migres mountain range of Spirit Realm, the core of the Migres Palace. The plants in the Migres mountain range were different from other places. Ordinary plants could not survive in the burning aura. It was rumored that countless years ago, the entire Migres mountain range was a group of volcanoes. At this time, there were still many active volcanoes. This place was dangerous and forbidden for normal people, but for artifact symbol masters, it was a place of instant. The high temperature of the volcanoes could temper the mind and soul of a spirit symbol master, and could even help artifact symbol masters refine artifacts. The mountain range rose and fell, and the surroundings were covered by crimson rocks. The volcanoes here had once erupted. The creatures around the mountain range had once been burned to ash under the terrifyingly high-temperature lava. Chapter 822. However, there were also many mountains that were verdant and lush, reaching into the clouds. Countless ancient palaces stretched out from them. "We're here. The Migres Palace is in front." On the back of the beast, Elder Zhu Xiao stood up and seemed to be talking to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu stood up and looked at the vast mountains and buildings below the beast. Ancient palaces stretched into the distance, and there were waves of talisman formations in the air. Third young master, this is also my first time coming to the Migres Palace. Bailey Su stood behind Du Xiaofu and looked down at the space below, sizing everything up. A plaza appeared in the vast mountains, and there were many figures. They all raised their heads and looked at the sky. There are 7 palaces under the 7-star hall. Our Migres Palace mainly consists of weapon talisman masters. Merak Palace mainly consists of talisman masters. Fekta Palace mainly consists of medicine talisman masters. Mizar Palace mainly consists of beast talisman masters. In the remaining 3 palaces, Dubhi Palace, Alioth Palace, and Alcade Palace, are all cultivators. Elder Zhu Xiu said to Du Xiaofu, "So, our Migres Palace has the least number of disciples among the 7 palaces. So the 7-star hall also has a demonic beast palace." Du Xiaofu was quite surprised that there were demonic beasts. He didn't think that the 7-star hall would have a palace that specialized in demonic beasts. "Greetings, Elder Zhu Xiu." As the demonic beast mounts landed, the crowd also landed. Thousands of disciples in the surrounding square bowed, while their gazes were sizing up Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu looked around. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at the sky in the distance. There were many hidden auras. No need for formalities. Elder Zhu Xiu waved his hand and looked at Du Xiaofu to signal him to leave. They entered a continuous stretch of ancient palaces. Is that the palace master's disciple? The palace master's disciple? Isn't that the young palace master? It's been 1,000 years, and no one has seen the palace master. Could it be that the palace master is still alive? The palace master is still alive. Sooner or later, our Migres Palace will return to its peak. Looking at Du Xiaofu's Migres Palace's back, many disciples of the Migres Palace whispered with doubt and expectation. "Young Hall Master, you can stay here for the time being." Elder Zhu Xiu has already gone to inform the seniors in the hall to determine if the young hall master is real or not. Tao Yu led Du Xiaofu to a quiet courtyard and then left. Du Xiaofu looked around, then entered the courtyard with Bailey Su. Migres Palace Master. In the courtyard, Du Xiaofu stretched himself. He looked calm, but his heart was in turmoil. After all, this was the Migres Palace left by his master, the venerable weapon. Third is his mice senior's third's spirit weapon master. Who would pretend to be someone else's disciple? Du Xiaofu rolled his eyes at Bailey Su. Bailey Su's eyes trembled and he said excitedly, "I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it. Third young master, you really are senior weapon master's disciple. Then you are the true young palace master of Migres Palace. The entire Migres Palace is yours. In the future, no one in spirit realm will dare to provoke you." Bailey Su became more excited as he spoke. The young palace master of Migres Palace. What kind of status was that? He could shake spirit realm with a stomp of his foot. "Guard me. I need to rest for a while." Du Xiaofu ignored Bailey Su and walked into the courtyard. On the bed, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged and pondered. Although he was already in Migres Palace, the most important reason for coming to Migres Palace was to find his master weapon master's body. However, this made things difficult for Du Xiaofu. At this time, he didn't have any clues. Plus, he and Alioth Palace were like fire and water. He couldn't just enter Alioth Palace to find his master's body. "Master, can you hear me? At the very least, you have to tell me where your physical body is right now. That way, I will have a target to look for." Du Xiaofu put down the long box on his back and murmured as he touched the seal characters on the box. Inside the long box was the purple gold heavenly tower. However, the purple gold heavenly tower didn't respond to Du Xiaofu's words. The night was very quiet. The moonlight was like a hazy silver mist. On the mountains, on the leaves, a solemn and holy light flashed. Swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, many figures landed in front of an ancient mountain. In the night, the moonlight was hazy. These figures were shrouded in moonlight. Their figures were old and incomparably powerful. There's no need to prove whether he's real or fake. If he's fake, it's only beneficial to Migres Palace. You're all watching, so he can't destroy Migres Palace. If he's real, then the Palace Lord will return soon. So many years have passed, we don't mind waiting a little longer. On the ancient mountain peak, a faint blazing aura fluctuated, and an aged voice sounded out, "On the celestial dragon's strange peak, there is a little toy that I abandoned halfway through refining back then. Let him try it. If he can succeed, then he will be the young master of the Migres Palace." The mountains overlapped, the giant cities were continuous, and the moon was swirling. On the peak of the mountain, a woman dressed in an orange-red outfit sat cross-legged quietly. Her body was shrouded in a dazzling brilliance, as if she wanted to tear the curtain of night and let the light shroud the world. Whoosh! The energy fluctuations of the surrounding heaven and earth poured into her graceful body like a storm. Faintly, in the depths of the moonlight, there were flashes of lightning and roars of thunder, like the birth of a god. Great! I didn't expect Shangnan to obtain the inheritance of the light ancestor. In this grand event of the Middle Continent, together with the other disciples that the Divine Light Court has focused on cultivating over the years, it's enough to sweep away one side and shock the entire Middle Continent. In this grand event of the Middle Continent, I'm afraid that one valley, two schools, three sects, and three schools will not be able to divide the world. Around the peak, there were many old figures surrounding, radiating a bright light. Huff! In the morning, the white light around Du Xiaofu's body slowly converged. Then, his eyes opened slightly. As the light in his eyes spread out, he spat out a mouthful of turbid air. "Third young master, someone is looking for you." Outside the room, Bailey Su's voice sounded. When Du Xiaofu walked out of the room, he saw Tao Yu, Yu Mingyuan, and a few other juniors. Young Palace Lord, Elder Zhu Xiao, and the others at the Heavenly Dragon Peak are waiting for you. Seeing Du Xiaofu, Tao Yu and the others bowed. "What are we going there for?" Du Xiaofu's eyes flashed with a little doubt. Tao Yu shook his head. "We don't know. The Heavenly Dragon Peak is considered a semi-forbidden area. We've never even been there." "Bring me there." Du Xiaofu did not hesitate. He nodded and left with Tao Yu and the others. The Heavenly Dragon Peak was a huge mountain in the Migres Palace. It looked like a dragon with its head held high. The dragon's shape was vivid and lifelike. When Du Xiaofu arrived at the Heavenly Dragon Peak, he saw Elder Zhu Xiao and a few familiar faces. In addition, there were a few middle-aged men and beautiful women present. Although they looked unfamiliar, Du Xiaofu could feel that all of them were 7-star Spirit Talisman Masters. There were even a few people who were at the peak of 7-star Spirit Talisman Masters. "There's an item inside. It's a half-finished product. If you can successfully refine it, you can prove that you're the Palace Lord's direct disciple." Elder Zhu Xiao said to Du Xiaofu. "What is it?" Du Xiaofu frowned. "We don't know what it is. We only know that it's on the Heavenly Dragon Peak. We wish you success." Elder Zhu Xiao finished speaking and signaled Du Xiaofu to enter the Heavenly Dragon Peak. "Okay." Du Xiaofu nodded. After signaling to Bailey Su, he walked towards the Heavenly Dragon Peak. From today onwards, no one is allowed to come close. Violators will be punished according to the palace rules. Elder Zhu Xiao turned around and instructed Tao Yu and the rest. The peculiar Heavenly Dragon Peak was surrounded by verdant mountains. Only the Heavenly Dragon Peak was full of rocks. Not a single blade of grass grew on it. The mountain was huge, about 100 feet tall. There were no steps to go up. There were only jagged rocks that could be used as stairs to reach the peak. "There's nothing here. What exactly do I need to refine?" From the bottom of the mountain to the peak, Du Xiaofu carefully looked for a long time, but he didn't find anything else on the Heavenly Dragon Peak. Even Du Xiaofu didn't let go of the cave on the peak, but he didn't find anything. The entire mountain was lifelike, but there was nothing else. It's definitely not that simple. On the peak, Du Xiaofu leaned against a rock and pondered. Elder Zhu Xiao wouldn't make fun of him, but he couldn't find anything else on this mountain. Stroking the rock he was leaning against, Du Xiaofu pondered. After a long time, he still didn't find anything. This mountain seems to be a little strange. Du Xiaofu stroked the rock he was leaning against and realized that what he touched was the sedimentation of volcanic ash. After a long time, it formed a layer of rock-like material. Could it be? As expected, Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up. He directly slapped his palm on the rock. Ka-ka, that rock suddenly trembled. Large pieces of rock fell off, and a piece of scale with a metallic luster was revealed. It shone brightly under the sunlight. Bang, bang, bang. Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with joy. He lightly slapped a few more times. Large pieces of rock fell off one after another. Layers of metallic luster were revealed, starting from the peak and spreading all the way to the foot of the mountain. Could it be that the entire mountain is a refinement item? Du Xiaofu landed at the foot of the mountain. He slightly raised his head. Faint golden profound chi surged in his palm. He clenched his hand into a fist, and then a fist imprint with a fluctuation fell down. Rumble. The heavenly dragon peak trembled. Layers of rocks fell off in a straight line. Finally, a huge object was revealed. Chapter 8:23. A lifelike metal dragon raised its head and waved its claws. It looked mighty and ferocious. A terrifying aura spread out from it, as if a peerless beast was hibernating. Once it awakened, it would definitely shake the heavens and earth. This is, Du Xiaofu's eyes trembled. The huge creature looked as if it wanted to soar into the clouds. The terrifying aura was invisible. It quietly occupied the mountain peak, making people's hearts tremble. Du Xiaofu went forward and touched the huge creature in front of him. Its entire body was covered in scales. These were real dragon scales that had been refined. Under the reflection of the sun, they shone brightly. They had been covered in rocks and ashes, and now they had appeared. Puppet, this is a dragon puppet. Du Xiaofu was shocked. After looking at it for a while, he could tell that this was a terrifying dragon puppet that was refined from a dragon's body. However, this dragon's body should be a mixed blood dragon. However, the aura it had when it was alive indicated that it had reached the Beast Emperor realm. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to emit such a terrifying and invisible pressure in this half-finished state. However, to be able to refine a dragon puppet with the body of a Beast Emperor, such methods and boldness made Du Xiaofu secretly shocked. As expected of the Migres Palace, normal people wouldn't dare to do such a thing. What Du Xiaofu knew about puppets was recorded in the secret soldier art and the holy body art. However, he had studied it with Yi Wuming before, but he had never refined it himself. Refining puppets was one of the terrifying methods of weapon talisman masters. However, there were very few weapon symbol masters who could refine puppets, not to mention those who were proficient in puppets. Secret soldier art, holy body art. After a while, Du Xiaofu's expression became more and more shocked. While looking at the huge creature, Du Xiaofu found out that this dragon puppet not only used the refining techniques of the secret soldier art, but also incorporated some of the techniques of the holy body art. There were quite a number of symbol arrays inscribed on the puppet's body, causing the strength of this dragon-shaped puppet to be much stronger than this mixed blood dragon. However, the dragon-shaped puppet made from the secret soldier art and the sacred body art was only a half-finished product. It was one final step away from being a complete success. In order to complete this last step, one had to be proficient in both the secret weapon technique and the sacred body technique. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to succeed. Du Xiaofu knew both the secret soldier art and the sacred body art, but he was not familiar with puppets. If he wanted to successfully refine this semi-finished product, he would have to slowly figure it out. I'm interested in studying the art of puppetry. Let's begin. Du Xiaofu muttered to himself as he immersed himself in the study of the art of puppetry. Du Xiaofu had long been interested in studying and comprehending the art of puppetry. The art of puppetry was a terrifying technique. It was rumored that some terrifying puppets had once appeared in this world, causing even the strongest experts to die. In the ancient era, those rumored peak artifact symbol masters relied on the puppets they made to stand proudly in the world. Even cultivators feared them and did not dare to provoke them. The continuous mountain range gave off an ancient aura. At dusk, the setting sun was like blood. In an elegant courtyard, a slender woman about 20 years old stood silently. She wore a long skirt and looked at the setting sun, lost in thought for a long time. "Senior Sister Zhu Shui, I knew you would be here." A young man wearing a long bluish-purple robe appeared. Looking at the delicate woman before him, his gaze dimmed as he sighed and said, "Are you thinking about Brother Xiaofu again?" Say, how could a person like him leave just like that? Why do I keep feeling that he is definitely still alive? That I will definitely have a chance to see him again? Zhu Shui softly said, or am I thinking too much? This is just my misconception. No, if this is what others think, they may be thinking too much. But you are different. Your spiritual root is special. As long as it is what you think, it will most likely happen. Hearing that, Guoming immediately revealed a happy expression. That's right. My spiritual root is special. Whatever I think will definitely happen. He is definitely not dead yet. Zhu Shui's eyes carried a smile as she happily said, I will also go to the Stone City. I want to go there and take a look. Senior Sister Zhu Shui, you can't go there right now. Tomorrow is the day you become the sect master's adopted daughter. Experts from various big forces will come. Even the One Valley, 2 schools, 3 sects, and 3 schools will send people over. You cannot leave the sect for even half a step. Otherwise, the sect master will definitely find me to settle accounts. Guoming immediately bitterly smiled as he shook his head and said, As for the Stone City, I will send people over to check the situation. Once there is news, we will naturally know. Okay then, Zhu Shui nodded. Senior Sister, soon, the grand event of the Central State will begin. Guoming said softly. His eyes were filled with yearning. That grand event of the Central State was enough to move all young people. Zhu Shui looked at the sky in front of the courtyard. Her eyebrows were curved, and her face was beautiful. She murmured softly, If he is here, he will be able to shine in the grand event of the Central Plains, and his name will resound throughout the Central Plains. Spirit Realm, Migres Palace. Half a month had passed. Regarding the return of the young Hall Master, the entire Migres Palace was abuzz with all kinds of discussions. The surroundings of the Azure Dragon Peak had long been isolated. No one could approach it. It has already been half a month. I wonder how it is. On a mountain peak, Elder Zhu Shui muttered softly as he looked in the direction of the Azure Dragon Peak. His expression was somewhat nervous. Is there something on the Azure Dragon Peak? I didn't know for so many years, a middle-aged man said doubtfully. In front of the enormous object, Du Xiaofu formed a seal in his hand. Blazing flames spurted out from his palm and wrapped around the enormous object. Under the blazing high temperature, there were no spiritual stoves or talisman cauldrons to form. But under the high temperature, the surface of the enormous dragon-shaped puppet was full of flickering talisman characters. Under the cover of the flames, the entire dragon-shaped puppet became fiery red. Faint dragon roars could be heard, as if it was alive. This dragon-shaped puppet had long been refined. It was just that there was one last step, which was to set up a puppet spirit. There were 2 kinds of puppet spirits. One was condensed from the soul of a demon beast or a human soul. The other was condensed directly from the soul of an artifact symbol master. But the second method of condensing a puppet spirit required an enormous amount of soul power for an artifact symbol master. It was not something that an ordinary artifact symbol master could support. However, the second method of condensing a puppet spirit was even more precise for a weapon symbol master in the future. A puppet spirit that was condensed from one's spiritual soul was undoubtedly equivalent to one's second self. It was like one's left and right arm. When they worked together, they would be able to reach the most perfect state and be able to unleash the strongest power of the puppet. At the moment, Du Xiaofu wanted to set up a puppet inside the dragon-shaped puppet and used the second method to set up a puppet spirit. A short time later, his hand seals changed and Du Xiaofu's figure rose up, directly arriving above the head of the dragon-shaped puppet. His 5 fingers bent slightly, and then, with a light flick, a burst of energy was released, shooting inside the head. Oh! A faint dragon roar could be heard, and the dragon-shaped puppet trembled, as if coming to life. Its whole body was filled with an awe-inspiring aura, and the fluctuating talisman arrays on its surface spread a terrifying aura. As his hand seals changed, a white light spread out from between Du Xiaofu's eyebrows, emitting an ancient and vigorous fluctuation. This was the soul power from the spiritual light ball in Du Xiaofu's mind. Under the control of Du Xiaofu, his hand seals were formed, and he gently tossed it, turning it into a beam of light, which then drilled into the head of the dragon-shaped puppet. Seemingly due to the entry of the soul power from Du Xiaofu's mind, the dragon-shaped puppet's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. Its lantern-like eyes were filled with a gloomy and awe-inspiring coldness. Du Xiaofu was not surprised by this scene. What he needed to do next was to completely condense a puppet spirit in the puppet's body, and then communicate with it to activate the entire puppet. Wanting to reach this step was not something that could be done in a short period of time. This required a process, as well as a powerful and vigorous spiritual energy. Ordinary symbol masters could only look on in the dust and could only sigh at their inadequacy. Du Xiaofu continued to condense the puppet spirit. It took a total of 5 days. As the puppet spirit was condensed, the dragon-shaped puppet was filled with more and more vitality. Talisman scripts flowed on the surface of its body, emitting a faint luster. Time continued to pass, and he still had not succeeded in setting up the puppet spirit. The fusion of the puppet's body and the puppet spirit required a perfect degree of compatibility. This kind of thing could not be rushed. Only when the puppet and the puppet spirit reached the most compatible time could it be completely successful. However, this was also the most important test for an artifact symbol master. Once the puppet and the puppet spirit reached the most compatible time, such an opportunity would not come again, and the entire puppet would be destroyed. Du Xiaofu knew the importance of this, and he had been very careful, not daring to be the slightest bit careless. Another half a day passed. When the sun was setting in the west and the setting sun was as red as blood, Du Xiaofu, who had been floating in front of the dragon-shaped puppet's head, suddenly trembled. His hand seals changed rapidly, and a trace of joy surged out of his eyes. The perfect time he had been waiting for had finally arrived. I'm sorry everyone for the past few days. I've only updated 1 chapter, and my body really can't write more. It's the last day, so I'll be thick-skinned and ask for some flowers. Tomorrow is a new month, and Little You will resume his normal updates. At the same time, he will add more chapters. Once again, I sincerely apologize to everyone for the past few days. Chapter 824. Condense the puppet spirit. Du Xiaofu yelled. A dazzling soul light turned into a light screen between his brows. Like countless light rain, it shrouded the entire dragon-shaped puppet. The aura of a peerless beast began to awaken. Roar! At that moment, the dragon-shaped puppet let out a dragon roar. A terrifying energy swept out like a storm. The runes on the surface of the puppet flowed endlessly as the runes were activated. A majestic aura that did not seem to be at the peak of the Beast Emperor realm suddenly spread out from the body of the dragon-shaped puppet. Roar! The dragon's roar shook the sky. At the same time, the dragon-shaped puppet seemed to have come to life. The dragon soared into the sky and circled in the air. Walala! In the sky, the wind blew and the clouds surged. The energy of heaven and earth gathered towards the dragon-shaped puppet. At that moment, the dragon-shaped puppet was like a bottomless pit. It absorbed the energy of heaven and earth around it endlessly. The runes on the surface of the puppet were activated, and its aura continued to rise. That is, on the mountain peak far away, Elder Zhu Xiu and the rest looked at the sky. A huge dragon soared into the sky and circled in the air. The dragon's roar rumbled, causing the wind to blow and the clouds to surge. The sky turned dark, and a terrifying aura spread across the land. A dragon puppet. That is a dragon puppet. After so many years, I didn't know that the entire Green Dragon Peak was a dragon puppet. A middle-aged man was shocked. That dragon puppet has the secret soldier art and sacred body art. None of us can refine it. A beautiful woman's eyes shone brightly as she looked at the sky in disbelief. Roar! The terrifying dragon puppet circled in the sky. Dark clouds rolled around it. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as it absorbed the energy of heaven and earth. Its aura swept across the sky. That is a puppet. A dragon puppet. In the Migres Palace, many disciples spread out. They looked at the sky and were shocked when they saw the huge dragon puppet circling in the air. On the mountain peaks far away, there were many hidden auras spreading over. Roar! The dragon roared, and a terrifying aura spread and rose within the body of the dragon-shaped puppet. In a short period of time, It was no weaker than a beast emperor at the peak of the Nirvana realm. Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in front of the huge dragon puppet. Looking at those lantern-like empty eyes, he spat out a mouthful of blood essence, which wrapped around a soul beam, and once again shot into the dragon puppet's mind. The blood essence wrapped around the soul beam and slowly entered. Finally, it turned into a thumb-sized red rune. It was an imprint that could not be erased. As the imprint fell, the terrifying dragon puppet's eyes seemed to have an additional life force. It raised its head slightly and twisted its neck, then lowered its head to look at Du Xiaofu. A hoarse voice came from its hideous mouth. "Master." Du Xiaofu lowered his eyes slightly. Just as the last imprint landed, he could clearly feel that his soul was being regenerated and another life was born. The huge creature before him was just like him at this moment. As long as he willed it, it would be able to obey his orders and unleash its terrifying power. He could feel that the aura of the enormous dragon puppet was no less than that of a beast emperor at the peak of the Nirvana realm. With such an aura and a terrifying puppet body, even a powerhouse at the peak of the martial emperor realm would have to retreat. "Greetings, young master." A few days later, Du Xiaofu sat in the main hall of the Migres Palace. Everyone around him bowed and greeted him. There were many 7-star talisman masters present. "Everyone, please rise." Du Xiaofu sat and looked at everyone in the main hall. He had finally settled down in the Migres Palace. Next, he had to find a chance to find his master's body. Then, from Elder Zhu Xiu and the others, Du Xiaofu learned that the Migres Palace was one of the 7-star hall, one of the 7 great forces of the spirit domain. In the entire spirit domain, and even the entire central state, there were a total of 8,000 talisman masters. There were no less than 4,000 talisman masters in the Migres Palace. Although this number could not be compared to the disciples of the ancient heaven sect, as talisman masters, there were very few of them. Naturally, they could not be compared to martial cultivators. However, compared to the number of talisman masters in the ancient heaven sect, the number of talisman masters in the Migres Palace was already extraordinary. It was enough to represent the status of the Talisman Master Hall. In the Migres Palace, there were many 7-star talisman master experts. There were also many elders who were cultivating in seclusion and rarely showed themselves. "Young master, there are still about 40 days before the 7-hall assembly. Please make a decision." A middle-aged elder came forward and said to Du Xiaofu. The aura on his body was that of a complete 7-star expert. 7-hall assembly? Du Xiaofu was unfamiliar with it. He had never heard of it before. "I think young master may not know the situation of the 7-hall assembly." Elder Zhu Xiu said to Du Xiaofu. The 7-hall assembly is a grand event of the 7-star hall. It is held once every 30 years, and this time, it coincides with the date of the 7-hall assembly. Among the young disciples of the 7-star hall, each hall will choose the best disciple of the young generation to participate. The winner will represent the entire 7-star hall and lead the strongest young generation of the 7-star hall to participate in a grand event of the central state. Speaking of which, the 7-hall assembly exists because of that grand event of the central state. The 7-hall assembly is held by the 7-star hall in rotation. This time, it is Alioth Hall's turn. Alioth Hall. Du Xiaofu's gaze suddenly trembled. All of his attention fell on the 3 words, Alioth Hall. He was just worrying about how to go to Alioth Hall to find his master's body. "Young Hall Master, what do you think of this assembly of the 7 halls?" Elder Zhu Xiu said to Du Xiaofu. "Our Migres Hall originally planned to let Tao Yu join. However, Tao Yu has been focusing on the myriad weapon assembly and has not even broken through to the 7-star talisman master level. If he participates, I'm afraid he won't have any chance of winning." Elder Zhu Xiu's voice paused for a moment. He smiled bitterly and continued. "Actually, even if Tao Yu has broken through to the 7-star talisman master level, it will be difficult for him to win. Our Migres Hall has always been unable to achieve any results in the 7-hall assembly. It is only important for us to participate. I will personally participate in the 7-hall assembly," Du Xiaofu said. This time, it was the opportunity to head to Alioth Hall. "Young Hall Master, Although the Alioth Palace and our Migres Palace are both part of the Seven Stars Palace, our seven palaces have always minded our own business. Not long ago, young Hall Master killed someone from the Alioth Palace. In this myriad weapon meeting, you even offended that narrow-minded and treacherous Ko Ji-xiong. I'm afraid that if young Hall Master personally goes there, there will be some trouble. An elder in a long robe said. He was also present at the myriad weapon assembly in Great Weapon City. Now that he heard that the young master was going to Alioth Hall personally, he could not help but worry. The expression in Elder Zhu Xiu's eyes changed slightly. He said, if you personally head to Alioth Hall to represent the Migres Hall in the Seven Hall Assembly, I think it will be inappropriate for Alioth Hall to find trouble. With all seven halls gathered, Alioth Hall will also have scruples. It's decided then. I will personally head to Alioth Hall when the time comes. Du Xiaofu had already made a decision in his heart. He said, as for this period of time, I want to properly comprehend everything that Master left behind in the hall. At night, the moonlight hung in the sky. However, the moon was dim and the stars were bright. Buildings could be faintly seen in the continuous mountain range. Occasionally, the cries of demonic beasts could be heard. There are still 40 days. This is your last chance. My disciple, I have already done my best for you. As long as you can make another breakthrough, there will be an extremely great opportunity at that time. Whether you are a dragon or a worm in the Seven Hall Assembly will depend on you. Ko Ji-xiong said to Qin official in a secret room. He handed over a jade bottle that was emitting a dense aura of spiritual medicine to Qin official. Thank you, Master. I will definitely do my best to break through the final step. Qin official received the jade bottle. Coldness spread in his narrow and feminine eyes. He said, there is also that Xiaofeng. One day, I will definitely kill him personally. To deal with Xiaofeng, you have to plan everything carefully. I have received news that Xiaofeng has already become the young hall master of Migres Hall. It will not be easy to kill him. Ko Ji-xiong said, however, I will definitely not let that brat off easily. It is said that he will come to participate in the Seven Hall Assembly this time. At that time, we will see if he can leave Alioth Hall. Since he dares to come to Alioth Hall, it will be the end of that brat. Qin official gritted his teeth. His voice burst out from between his teeth. If you want to take revenge, you have to increase your strength first. That brat is indeed extraordinary. His spiritual energy is extremely special. As long as you break through to the martial emperor realm in these 40 days, I will give you a rare treasure in the hall. I believe that at that time, the other elders in the hall will not be able to say anything. At that time, you will have a chance to take revenge personally. In a quiet space, jade walls stood in great numbers and characters were densely packed. Du Xiaofu was comprehending everything in front of the stone wall. This was the refining experience left behind by his master, the revered weapon. There were also many manuscripts of the secret soldier secrets and the sacred body secrets. Compared to the secret soldier secrets and the sacred body secrets left behind by his master, the ones left behind in Migres Hall were nothing. It was almost impossible to comprehend the real secret soldier secrets and the sacred body secrets from them. However, the refining experience was an indispensable part of the secret soldier secrets and the sacred body secrets. It was the foundation and source of the secret soldier secrets and the sacred body secrets. Du Xiaofu had the secret soldier secrets and the sacred body secrets, but he could only comprehend them by himself. No one could explain them to him. Chapter 825. Even with Du Xiaofu's comprehension ability, it was not something that could be done in a day for a person to completely comprehend the profound and vast secret soldier art and saint body art. At this moment, the comprehension experience that his master, the revered artifact, had left in the Migres Palace was the best explanation of the secret soldier art and saint body art. For Du Xiaofu, this was what he needed the most. The bottlenecks that he had encountered in the comprehension of the secret soldier art and saint body art were almost immediately solved under Du Xiaofu's comprehension. The refining experience left by his master, the revered artifact, was equivalent to simplifying the complexity of the secret soldier art and saint body art and appearing in Du Xiaofu's mind. Du Xiaofu was immersed in it, comprehending everything, comprehending his master's secret soldier art and saint body art. Mountains stood tall and surrounded by mountains. The huge mountain peak was surrounded by verdant green, showing an exuberant vitality. The mountain peak was surrounded by clouds and mist. In the distance, there were thousands of mountains that rose and fell, magnificent and boundless. In the main hall of the mountain peak, a thin, middle-aged man who was nearly 7 feet tall was wearing a green robe embroidered with green patterns. His long black hair was neatly combed into a bun. His green robe and black hair made him look elegant. A message jade slip in his hand was flickering with light. He murmured softly, "The disciple of the revered artifact, Qiao Feng." He confused beast energy. Is he really the direct disciple of the revered artifact, sect master? I don't know if the appearance of the revered artifact's disciple is true or false. If the revered artifact appears, I'm afraid the entire spirit realm and even the entire central state will be stirred up again, Protector Hao said. We have never been able to interfere in the spirit realm. Whether the appearance of the revered artifact's disciple is true or false, we just have to pay a little attention. However, that grand event is coming. I have received news that this time, the immeasurable sect, the Great Luan sect, and the others all have extraordinary people. Even in the Divine Light Court, it is rumored that someone has obtained the inheritance of the Light Ancestor. It seems that this grand event will be a fierce battle. Sima Taxing raised his head slightly. Against the tall and straight figure, there was a bit of elegance in his dignified manner. He must have been a handsome and extraordinary man when he was young. They have extraordinary individuals, but our ancient heaven sect also has them. With those 2 freakish geniuses from before, together with the eldest miss, we are enough to suppress the other powers, Protector Hao said. His eyes were filled with confidence. No matter how strong you are, there will always be someone stronger. With the 3 of them, we do have a fighting chance. Sima Taxing Star's eyes moved. There was a faint luster flowing on his skin. His eyes flashed with a deep light like colored glass. He said softly, "If only that guy was here, I would have more confidence." Time passed by slowly. Within the quiet space, Du Xiaofu was immersed in comprehension, and he occasionally formed seals with his hands that transformed into numerous talisman markings that flashed about. Young Hall Master. Tao Yu's figure appeared in the quiet space. Phew! Spitting out a mouthful of turbid air, Du Xiaofu withdrew his hand seals and slowly got up to stretch. Young Hall Master, it's about time. We should head to Alioth Hall to participate in the 7 Halls Conference, Tao Yu said. Alioth Hall. Du Xiaofu turned his head slightly and looked at the purple-gold heavenly palace box on his back. He murmured softly, Master, when we reach Alioth Hall, you have to remind me where my physical body is. The next morning, inside Migres Hall, demon beasts flew into the air. Du Xiaofu, Bailey Su, Elder Zhu Xiu, Tao Yu, and the others headed to Alioth Hall. The 7 Halls Conference this time was held at the headquarters of Alioth Hall, Tianheng Mountain. It would take several days to travel from Migres Hall to the headquarters of Alioth Hall. Tianheng Mountain, this mountain range was famous in the entire spirit realm. Even in the entire central state, it had a lot of weight. Because this was the headquarters of Alioth Hall, it was rumored that Tianheng Mountain was full of experts. For more than 1,000 years, countless factions of spirit realm had disappeared and risen, but Alioth Hall still stood tall on Tianheng Mountain. Any faction that provoked Alioth Hall would disappear in the end, and Alioth Hall would grow to its current status in spirit realm. The 7 Halls Conference, as the name suggested, was held by the 7 Halls of 7-Star Hall. The main characters were the strongest of the younger generation of the 7 Halls. The 7 Halls Conference was a grand event of the entire spirit realm. Compared to the Myriad Artifact Conference, the 7 Halls Conference was no doubt even better. The liveliness was even more explosive. Every 7 Halls Conference was the talk of the entire spirit realm. It represented the strongest of the younger generation of the 7 Halls. From a certain point of view, it even represented the power of the 7 Halls. The news of this 7 Palaces Conference had spread throughout the entire spirit realm. The names of the outstanding disciples who represented the 7 Palaces had also spread far and wide. It was rumored that the participants of the Seven Halls Conference this time were Lin Weiqi of Alpha Hall, Yu Bai of Alpha Hall, Wu Masheng of Fecta Hall, Qin Guan of Aliath Hall, Dongli Diao of Mizar Hall, and Sun Wu of Brilliance Hall. These people were all famous among the younger generation of Spirit Realm and even the entire Central State. And in this Seven Palace Conference, the people who were publicly recognized as the most likely to win the Seven Palace Conference were Lin Weiqi from W Hall, Dongli Diao from Mizar Hall, and Sun Chong from Brilliance Hall. Next were Qin Guan from Aliath Hall and Yu Bai from Merak Hall. As for the disciples of Fecta Hall and Migres Hall, while extraordinary, they had always been overlooked in the Seven Halls Conference. After all, the Seven Halls Conference had always been a competition of strength. In terms of battle strength, Fecta Hall was a medicine symbol master, and Migres Hall was an artifact symbol master. In terms of battle strength, they could not compare to martial cultivators. Demon beasts could not even compare to formation symbol masters. Tianheng Mountain was located in the south of Spirit Realm. The entire mountain peak reached into the clouds and was shrouded in clouds that never dissipated. This time, I don't know who will win the championship. It should be Lin Weiqi of Alpha Hall. Rumor has it that Lin Weiqi's talent is monstrous. She may have already reached the martial monarch realm at such a young age. Dongli Diao of Mizar Hall may also have reached the beast monarch realm. Rumor has it that he is not below Lin Weiqi. Sun Wu of Alcade Hall is also a peerless genius. Lin Weiqi, Dongli Diao, Sun Wu, and the others are not to be trifled with. If any of them can break through to the martial monarch realm, then by relying on their extraordinary methods, they will be able to secure victory and win the championship. Don't forget that the successor of the revered artifact appeared in Migres Hall this time. It is said that even Guardian Jiming and Emperor Chu Jiang of Aliath Hall were killed by him. In the Myriad Weapon Conference, he even killed a 7-star spirit symbol master. His appearance is definitely a dark horse this time. That Xiaofeng offended Aliath Hall. He wouldn't dare to come to Aliath Hall this time, would he? That's a little too bold. It is said that Xiaofeng is the young hall master of Migres Hall. Why wouldn't he dare to come to Aliath Hall? Aliath Hall won't truly start a war with Migres Hall like this, right? Around the Tianheng Mountain Range, figures flowed endlessly like ants towards the center of the Tianheng Mountain Range. Countless people of the spirit realm were heading towards Aliath Hall to participate in the Seven Hall Conference. Roar, huge demonic beast mounts swept across the air, and many figures stood still. Elder Zhu Xiu looked at the densely packed figures below and said softly, "It seems that the Seven Hall Conference this time will be even more lively." The Seven Hall Conference is really lively. Young Master Du exhaled lightly. He looked into the distance and was rather moved as he looked at the densely packed figures. "Young Hall Master, we will be there soon." Elder Zhu Xiu looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Young Hall Master, with the Young Hall Master personally coming this time, it seems that our Migres Hall will be able to hold our heads up high in the Seven Hall Conference this time. Has no one in Migres Hall ever obtained a passable result before?" Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. Elder Zhu Xiu grimaced slightly and shook his head. He said, "I am ashamed to say that in these years, Migres Hall has never obtained any results in the Seven Hall Conference. The secret weapon arts and sacred body arts that the Hall Master left behind are vast and boundless. Our comprehension is limited. We have some attainments in artifact forging, but in terms of battle strength, we really have not comprehended much." Du Xiaofu nodded slightly. He also knew in his heart that as an artifact symbol master, their battle strength was not high. The secret weapon arts and sacred body arts that his master, the revered artifact, had left behind in Migres Hall were only some manuscripts and insights. They could not comprehend much. If they truly comprehended the secret weapon arts and sacred body arts, then the battle strength of an artifact symbol master would definitely not be below martial cultivators and demonic beasts. Wong. Suddenly, on Du Xiaofu's back, the square box that contained the purple-gold heavenly tower trembled and emitted a buzzing sound. However, it soon returned to normal. "Young Hall Master, we've arrived. The people in front should be here to receive us," Elder Zhu Xiu said to Du Xiaofu. His gaze was directed to a towering mountain range that was wrapped in clouds. Hello. In the air ahead, there were cries of demonic beasts. A huge demonic beast lizard with 4 wings on its back flew over. There were many figures on it, and their auras were sharp. Are you people from Migres Hall? On the back of the demonic beast lizard, an extraordinary young man stepped out and asked as he looked at Elder Zhu Xiu and the others. That's right. We have come from Migres Hall to participate in the 7-Hall conference. Tao Yu saw that the other party was only a young disciple and immediately went up to talk. Migres Hall? Up ahead is the main peak of my Yuheng Hall. Get off your mounts and walk up. Hearing that, the extraordinary young man revealed some arrogance in his eyes. He slightly berated and wanted everyone to get off their mounts. Whose disciple are you? Is it your idea or Yuheng Hall's idea for us to get off our mounts and walk up? Hearing that, Elder Zhu Xiu looked at the young man. His towering body was like an ancient well. At that moment, his gaze was calm, and there was a sense of majesty that caused the extraordinary young man to involuntarily tremble. The young man slightly clenched his teeth, snorted and said, "Of course, this is the rule of my Yuheng Hall. Anyone who wants to walk up the main peak of Yuheng Hall must walk up. Those who trespass are going against my Yuheng Hall." Chapter 8:26. Chirp. There was the chirping of a bird in the air. A huge red bird flew over from afar. It was red in color and was as red as fire. Raging Flame Divine Sparrow, that's a Lin Weiqi from Dubby Hall. Seeing the huge red bird, exclamations sounded from the mountain range. The Raging Flame Divine Sparrow was the mount of Lin Weiqi from Dubby Hall. The appearance of the Raging Flame Divine Sparrow meant that Lin Weiqi from Dubby Hall had come. On the huge Raging Flame Divine Sparrow, a beautiful red figure stood. Her graceful figure was moving. She followed the Raging Flame Divine Sparrow to the main peak and disappeared into the clouds. Du Xiaofu looked at the disappearing Raging Flame Divine Sparrow and locked his gaze on the beautiful figure on the Raging Flame Divine Sparrow. Du Xiaofu found it difficult to detect the aura of the faintly moving woman. It seemed to be unfathomable. Young Hall Master, that was Lin Weiqi from Dubby Hall. She is the leader of the younger generation of Dubby Hall. She is extremely talented and is known as the rare genius of Dubby Hall. She is also the most popular candidate for the champion of this 7 Halls conference. Yu Mingyuan said softly beside Du Xiaofu. Why can the people from Dubby Hall directly go to the main peak, but the people from Migres Hall have to go to the main peak? Are you going against Migres Hall? As the Raging Flame Divine Sparrow flew into the main peak of Tianheng Mountain, Tao Yu's expression became more serious. He stared at the extraordinary young man from Yuheng Hall and scolded. The extraordinary young man's face was green and red. He then said gloomily, "That is Dubby Hall. You are Migres Hall. If you want to go to the main peak, get off your beast mount." Young Hall Master, it seems that Yuheng Hall is purposely making things difficult for Migres Hall. Elder Zhu Xiu's calm eyes were filled with coldness. It wasn't difficult for anyone to know that Yuheng Hall purposely sent this young disciple to make things difficult for Migres Hall. This matter probably had something to do with what happened at the Myriad Weapon Conference in Daki City. As the extraordinary young man finished speaking, Tao Yu was furious. The young man before him was clearly targeting the Migres Palace. Originally, if one wanted to ascend the main peak of Yuheng Hall, they naturally had to dismount and walk in. This was indeed the rule of Yuheng Hall. However, for someone of the Migres Palace's status, it had never been used. Furthermore, Lin Weiqi from the Dubhe Palace had openly rode a monstrous beast as a mount. This time, the Yuheng Palace was clearly facing the Migres Palace. "Let me do it." Tao Yu hadn't finished speaking when she was interrupted by Du Xiaofu. His figure silently stood in front of Tao Yu as he gazed at the extraordinary young man on the back of the lizard and said, "Find someone with sufficient weight to speak. We'll wait here." Looking at the mysterious young man in front of him, the extraordinary young man's eyes flickered as he asked, "What do you mean?" Du Xiaofu said, "It means that you're not important enough. Go and get those who are." "How dare you? What are you?" The extraordinary young man was stunned. Then, he flew into a rage and cursed loudly. Slap! A crisp sound resounded. Before the young man could finish his words, a palm print instantly appeared on his face. The space before the extraordinary young man fluctuated as a purple figure appeared silently. A claw print was clasped on his neck, causing his aura and chi to stagnate. The space froze and he couldn't move at all. In the Yuheng Hall, the young man was one of the top figures among the younger generation other than official Qin. With the cultivation of the Nirvana realm in the Martial King realm, he was definitely considered a dragon among men. However, at this moment, the young man didn't expect that he would be slapped in the face and captured alive without any power to resist. Since you have a dirty mouth, you should be taught a lesson. Since you're disrespectful to me, then I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of your elders. Under the mask, Du Xiaofu's sharp gaze fluctuated. He slapped the extraordinary young man's face several times. The young man's nose was bruised and his face was swollen. Blood flowed out of his mouth. The young man's eyes were stunned for a long time before fear surged out. He was stunned for a long time and couldn't come back to his senses. Let go of senior brother Ma. What are you trying to do? On the monster lizard, many young men and women with extraordinary aura behind the extraordinary young man came back to their senses. Then, their chi surged and they pounced towards Du Xiaofu. Roar! The monster lizard also roared as runes flashed. It wanted to overturn Du Xiaofu. Get down! Du Xiaofu shouted in a deep voice. A frightening purple flame swept out from within his body, as if it had transformed into a huge purple flame demonic phoenix. It spread its wings and a frightening hot aura suddenly spread out, as if it could destroy everything. Bang, bang, bang. A dull sound spread out as the young men and women were shaken and fell down. The huge monster lizard also fell from the sky and smashed onto the mountain below. The shocking movement immediately attracted the attention of many people in the mountain range. People of Yuheng Palace, listen up. Sending some cats and dogs to block the way is just asking for humiliation. If you don't want my Migres Palace to participate in the Seven Palace Conference, why do you have to be so shameful? Du Xiaofu held the extraordinary young man in his hand as he looked at the main peak of Yuheng Palace. His voice resounded in the mountain range. So it's the people of Migres Palace. Could that young man be the rumored disciple of Weapon Sovereign? It seems that Yuheng Palace and Migres Palace are at odds. It seems that the rumors are true. The conflict between Yuheng Palace and Migres Palace is not shallow. In the mountain range, many voices came out and attracted countless gazes. So it's the people of Migres Palace. Please forgive us for being late to welcome you. A leisurely voice reverberated in the sky above the valley. Then, many figures flew over, and their auras were extremely vigorous. The first was an old man who seemed to be about the same age as Elder Zhu Shou. Many people behind him looked at Du Xiaofu and secretly twitched. Elder Zhu Shou, I think there must be some misunderstanding. The disciples of the palace don't know etiquette. When we return, we will definitely punish them severely. The first old man looked at Elder Zhu Shou and cupped his hands. The smile on his face hid a trace of gloominess. All right, I hope that Yuheng Palace can give me an explanation, Du Xiaofu said. He waved his hand and threw the extraordinary young man who was holding the restriction down from the mountain below. The impact caused the mountain to shake and the rocks to surge. The faces of the people from Yuheng Palace immediately twitched, and they all looked at Du Xiaofu. Their gazes were not good. Du Xiaofu threw the disciple of Yuheng Palace down the mountain in front of them. This clearly showed that he did not put them in his eyes. May I know who you are? The old man looked at Du Xiaofu. The aura on his body fluctuated, as if he wanted to spy on Du Xiaofu's cultivation. However, he was a little disappointed. The aura on the mysterious young man was unfathomable. Even he could not detect it. Elder Zhang, this is the young master of Migres Palace, the personal disciple of the palace master, Weapon Sovereign. Elder Zhu Xiu said to the old man. Weapon Sovereign. Elder Zhang's gaze trembled. The two words Weapon Sovereign were enough to make his heart tremble. He had already known about the appearance of the successor of Weapon Sovereign. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he could not help but feel uneasy. I think we can go up the mountain. This time, Yuheng Palace is only holding the 6 Palace Conference and not the 7 Palace Conference. Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Zhang and said, Just now, Someone deliberately made things difficult for him. Du Xiaofu would never believe that Elder Zhang did not know about it. Everyone, please. We have already arranged a place for you to rest. The people from the other palaces have already arrived. Tomorrow is the day of the 7-Palace Conference. Elder Zhang glanced at Du Xiaofu and said to Elder Zhu Xiao and the others, "Roar." The group then left on their demon beast mounts and flew up to the main peak of Yuheng Palace. Just now, that was the young master of Migres Palace. He really is not simple. In the mountain range, the crowd whispered. Figures continued to head to Yuheng Palace to watch the 7-Palace Conference tomorrow. The 7-Palace Conference was the greatest event in the entire Spirit Realm. It represented the true peak of the younger generation of Spirit Realm. At dusk, the setting sun sank. The silver-gray evening dew covered the mountain range. In the side courtyard of the mountain peak, Du Xiaofu looked at the mountains with a serious expression. The moment he entered Yuheng Palace, Du Xiaofu clearly felt the purple-gold heavenly tower behind him move for an instant. But at this moment, the purple-gold heavenly tower was silent again. All movement disappeared without a trace. It was difficult to make any more movements. Where is Master's body hidden? Du Xiaofu murmured softly. He had finally reached Yuheng Palace, but he still had no clue about his master's body. Is the only way to go to Merak Palace and ask the Merak Palace Master for help? Du Xiaofu murmured softly. Back then, Master had left a message saying that if he was at his wit's end, he could ask the Merak Palace Master for help. That was the only person his master had mentioned that he could trust. But after 1,300 years, no one knew where the Merak Palace Master was. It was easier said than done to find him. The night was quiet. Night shrouded the earth. Everything was silent. In the quiet courtyard, a young man around the age of 24 or 25 stood silently. His face was extremely three-dimensional. His nose was like the sharp beak of an eagle, and it formed a sharp curve. However, it just so happened that his face glowed with an extremely clear and gentle radiance, and it seemed as if it had been cut, polished, and it was extremely moving. The young man wore a cloud-white battle robe and a cloud-white cloak. The cloak was embroidered with moving patterns. Chapter 8:27. That pattern was like a phoenix that was about to spread its wings, ready to spread its gorgeous wings at any time. Tomorrow is the great conference of the 7 palaces. How are the preparations? Asked an old man. He looked at the young man and said, We've been preparing for the great conference of the 7 palaces for a long time. This time, we can't make any mistakes. It's time for the Kaiyang Hall. The young man turned his head and exuded an extremely moving aura. It was as if all the elegance and grandeur in the world had gathered on him at the same time. He was like the clear moonlight under a tranquil stream, like a lofty mountain, but with some pride. He looked at the old man and said softly, I will do my best. Only Lin Weiqi can be my opponent. I will ignore the others. This time, the only one who can lead the 7 Stars Palace to the Central Plains is me. Don't be careless. Yu Bai and Sun Wu can't be underestimated either. There's also Officer Qin from the Yu Hong Hall. I heard that the Yu Hong Hall paid a great price to train Officer Qin. Once he breaks through to the Huang Qi layer, we can't underestimate him either, said the old man. So what if he breaks through to the Huang Qi layer? He's just a human, said the young man disdainfully. He then said, if he relied on external forces to break through to the Huang Qi layer, he wouldn't be that strong. If he needed external forces to break through to the Huang Qi layer, he would have already lost. There's also the Tian Quan Hall. It's said that the Venerable Weapon's direct disciple, Qiao Feng, has already come to the Huang Qi layer. He's young, but it's said that he's already killed an Huang Qi layer cultivator. If he participates, he'll be a dark horse. You have to be careful. You know that this time, we're not just going to the great conference of the 7 palaces. Venerable Weapon, it's been so many years, is he really still alive? If he's really the Venerable Weapon's disciple, I want to know how strong a talisman master can be, said the young man with a smile. His smile was like a flower blooming on a snowy mountain. He looked natural and proud. It was night and the sky was high. A crescent moon was hanging in the southwest sky. The cold moonlight shone on the earth. It was so dark. On the peak of the mountain, A woman dressed in fiery red stood quietly, bathing in the cold moonlight. As the night wind blew, the long hair on her temples swayed slightly, adding to her charm. This woman was very beautiful, like a fairy in the night. Slowly, a curved blade appeared in the woman's hand. Her figure moved, and with a light tap of her toes, she began to dance. Swish, swish. The alluring woman's wrist rotated the handle of the scimitar, and the scimitar also slowly rotated. Gradually, the scimitar rotated faster and faster, and some of the fallen leaves on the ground were also rolled up. A faint fragrance floated in the air. It was the fragrance of orchids on the woman's body. It was also the fragrance of flowers that permeated the night sky. It gathered towards the peak of the mountain, accompanying the graceful woman as she wielded her saber. Swish, swish. After a long time, the blade dance stopped and the woman appeared. Her aura was calm. "Vicky, how are your preparations for tomorrow?" A benevolent-looking old lady was staggering. However, her eyes were emitting a dazzling light in the dark night. The aura on her body was able to affect the surrounding space. "I'm not preparing for tomorrow. I'm preparing for the next grand event in the Central State. I want to know, the so-called One Valley, 2 religions, 3 sects, 3 schools, and 3 schools. I want to know how powerful they are." The fiery red woman slightly raised her head. Her voice was extremely sweet and clear, and the curve of her beautiful face revealed a noble and heroic spirit. She was as beautiful as the spring plum blossoms, and as divine as the autumn snow, making people unable to look at her directly. The night was getting darker, and the entire world sank into a mysterious silence. In the room, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged, and his body was covered in a faint white light. It was like a divine light shrouding him, and an ancient aura was fluctuating. Swish, swish. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in the room, and a rune light swept towards Du Xiaofu. At this moment, Du Xiaofu opened his eyes, and a palm print wrapped in purple flames directly collided with the rune. Bang! A low, muffled sound was heard, and the terrifying collision surged. However, the entire room was frozen, and the shocking movement did not attract any attention outside the room. Thud, thud. Du Xiaofu's body was sent flying from the bed and slammed into the wall, but he could not break the wall. At this moment, everything in the room was confined. Swish! A terrifying palm print appeared and directly enveloped Du Xiaofu. A great suppressive force fell, and under the palm print, there was a terrifying electric light raging. Boom! Du Xiaofu's palm print collided, and the runes on the palm print flashed, overlapping with the opponent's palm print, and a terrifying electric light raged. Swish, swish! The electric light raged, and the terrifying electric light directly drilled into Du Xiaofu's palm and disappeared. The electric light lingered on the surface of his body and then disappeared. It's not the Tai Water Fire Thunder, but it's not below the Tai Water Fire Thunder. A shocked voice resounded, and then the confinement in the space disappeared, and a shadow disappeared from the room like lightning. Who? Du Xiaofu's figure flew out of the room, and the figure just now had already disappeared. He had escaped the detection of his spiritual soul power and disappeared without a trace. Young Hall Master, Third Young Master, Elder Zhu Xiu, Bailey Su, and the rest appeared outside the courtyard and looked into the distance. Finally, their nervous gazes landed on Du Xiaofu. Seeing that Du Xiaofu was fine, they were relieved. Someone just came, and he was very strong and unfathomable. Du Xiaofu stretched out his hand to wipe off the faint golden blood stain that was the closest to him. His eyes trembled. The strength of that person just now was too strong, making it difficult for him to fight back. Young Hall Master, are you okay? Elder Zhu Xiu looked serious. This was the Alioth Palace, and with the scene during the day, he was naturally worried that someone would sneak an attack. I'm fine. That person just now was just probing. Du Xiaofu said softly, and his eyes narrowed. Could that person be related to his master's revered weapon body? That kind of strength was definitely not an ordinary person. That person just now could come and go freely in the Alioth Palace, and his position in the Alioth Palace was definitely not simple. It's good that you're fine. This is the Alioth Palace, and we came here openly. Even if the Alioth Palace wants to do something, they will have scruples. Elder Zhu Xiu said, "Everyone, go and rest. Everything is fine now." Du Xiaofu said, "With that person's strength, if he really wanted to do something, none of them would be able to stop him. Since that was the case, it was better to let go of everything." Young Hall Master, it's going to be daybreak soon. During the Seven Palace Conference, there are a few extraordinary young people. You should be more careful. Elder Zhu Xiu said to Du Xiaofu. Okay. Du Xiaofu nodded. He was not a careless person. During the day, he had seen Lin Weiqi's figure, and her aura was unfathomable. The strongest young people of the Seven-Star Hall would not be any weaker than the disciples of the One Valley, 2 sects, 3 sects, and 3 factions. Naturally, he could not be careless. After a while, everyone went back to rest. After this disturbance, Du Xiaofu did not have the mood to cultivate. He stood in front of the courtyard and looked at the new moon in the sky, waiting for daybreak. The light of dawn gradually appeared, and the first ray of light from the rising sun was bright red. In an instant, a fireball soared into the sky, causing people to stare at it. Huff, in the secret room, a mouthful of turbid air was spat out. A young man in snow-white clothes appeared, his body rippling with a faint pressure. A bright light shot out from his long and narrow eyes, and the aura on his body caused the entire secret room to violently tremble. "Xiaofeng, don't fall into my hands today. I will not let you go." The young man's eyes were cold, and his handsome face carried a kind of cruel gentleness. In the early morning, at the center of Tianheng Mountain, there was a sea of people on the surrounding mountains. There were also countless figures moving closer and closer. The noise gathered and resounded through the clouds. It was extraordinarily lively. When Du Xiaofu and Elder Zhu Xiu arrived at the mountain range under the guidance of Yuheng Hall's disciples, Du Xiaofu was flabbergasted when he saw the densely packed figures that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was as if they had covered the entire mountain range and forest. Du Xiaofu was shocked. He did not think that the Seven-Hall Conference could attract so many people. It was enough to see the importance of the Seven-Star Hall in Spirit Realm. Every action of the Seven-Star Hall attracted the attention of countless people, not to mention the Seven-Hall Conference, the most important event of the Seven-Star Hall. In the mountains, there were also many figures entrenched on the towering trees. In the vast surroundings, there was a huge square. The plaza was surrounded by mountains, and the clouds in the air made it look like a paradise. At the top of the plaza, there was a tall platform that was dozens of meters tall and hundreds of meters wide. It was majestic like a small mountain and seemed to pierce into the clouds. It gave people an ancient and mysterious feeling. The entire plaza, including the tall platform, was covered in seal marks. It was obvious that a seal had been set up. Normal power could not shake the entire plaza and the tall platform. On the tall platform, there were many seats arranged in 7 rows. It was obvious that they were prepared for the people of the 7 halls. The main seats were all golden seats that could overlook the entire plaza. It was very imposing. Inside and outside the plaza, many disciples of Yuheng Hall stood straight. The aura that faintly spread out showed that they were not ordinary. From the aura on their bodies, the people who appeared at the 7-Hall Conference were not ordinary disciples of Yuheng Hall. Chapter 828. Everyone, the VIPs from the other palaces should be arriving soon. Please take a seat and wait. A middle-aged man from the Alioth Palace led Du Xiaofu and the others to the high platform in the square and then retreated to the side. The people from the Migres Palace have arrived. Is the leader the disciple of the Weapon Master, the Weapon Emperor, Xiaofeng? With the arrival of Du Xiaofu and the others, there was an extremely hot wave of noise in the surrounding mountains. Young Palace Master, please take a seat first. The people from the other palaces should be arriving soon. Elder Zhu Xiu motioned for Du Xiaofu to take a seat first. Du Xiaofu nodded and sat on the main seat without hesitation. After looking around, he was about to close his eyes and rest. Suddenly, he looked to the side. Swoosh, swoosh. In the side, there was the sound of wind breaking. Then, figures flashed. Many extraordinary disciples of the Alioth Palace landed from the air and scattered on the high platform. The disciples of the Alioth Palace faintly formed a tacit understanding. Their eyes could lock onto the entire square. If any onlookers made any strange movements, they would be locked onto by these extraordinary disciples of the Alioth Palace. Roar. At the same time, many demonic beasts roared throughout the mountain range. Demonic beast mounts occupied the air, bringing with them a dazzling rune light. It almost made people squint their eyes and unable to look directly at them. Then, many figures landed on the high platform. Those figures rippled with an extremely vigorous aura. Immediately, there were a few familiar figures that made Du Xiaofu raise his eyebrows. Du Xiaofu saw that at the Myriad Weapon Conference in the Great Weapon City, Elder Yun Ziqin of the Merak Palace, Elder Yin Xuanlong of the Tianji Palace, and the others were among them. There was also Elder Zhang of the Alioth Palace that he saw yesterday. Ko Jixiang, official Qin. As his gaze swept across, two familiar figures also appeared in Du Xiaofu's eyes. Immediately, a cold light flashed in his eyes under the mask. It's the experts from the 7 palaces. As the figures on the high platform swept down, there was a lot of discussion in the surroundings. Du Xiaofu's heart moved slightly. His gaze continued to sweep across a formation full of demonic beast aura. The leader of the formation was an old man with a vigorous aura. His long robe was embroidered with some patterns. Beside him was a young man in a battle robe and cloak. The pattern on the cloak was like a phoenix spreading its wings. Mizar Palace, demonic beasts. It was the young man in the 777-star palace. The young man in the battle robe and cloak was the most extraordinary Dongli Diao Dong. Diao Diao's Diao. The young man in the battle robe was Dong Diao 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 was Diao Diao Jiao Diao Diao Diao. Diao, SD Dits Dao. A well-built person appeared within Du Xiaofu's line of sight. This person was around 50 years old and wore a wide yellow robe embroidered with star runes. He seemed like a living being and faintly emitted a slight pressure. This person's aura seemed ordinary, not even as strong as Elder Zhu Shtou, Ko Jixiang, Elder Yin Xuanlong, and Elder Yun Ziqin. However, Du Xiaofu could feel a sense of danger from this person with his keen spiritual soul force. Even Elder Zhu Xiu's aura did not have such a sense of danger. Beside this person, there was a young man in a short robe. He was not tall, but his body was full of a sense of power. However, his aura was restrained, and there was no trace of it. Elder Cui Fu, long time no see. Zhu Xiu, you're here too. With the arrival of these people, some of the old men immediately exchanged greetings with each other. Young Hall Master, those are the experts of the 7 halls. Beside them are Elder Cloud Leopard of the Mizar Hall, Elder Yao Xing of the Brilliance Hall, and Elder Cui Fu of the Dubhe Hall. They are all experts of the 7 halls. Tao Yu whispered into Du Xiaofu's ear as he introduced the experts of the 7 halls. Du Xiaofu glanced at them. Elder Yao Xing of the Brilliance Palace was the only one whose identity he could not guess. Beside Elder Cui Fu of the Dubhe Palace, there was a beautiful woman in a red robe. She was heroic and valiant. She was Lin Weiqi, who he had seen yesterday. Seeing this Lin Weiqi, Du Xiaofu was slightly moved. This woman was so beautiful that one could not look straight at her. The aura on her body was even more unfathomable. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across a few youths in the entire square. Although all of them had used some secret techniques to conceal their auras, making it difficult for him to spy on them, Du Xiaofu felt that the most dangerous ones were Lin Weiqi and Dongli Diao. As for Qin Official, Du Xiaofu's eyes under the mask were slightly moved. After not seeing him for a while, Qin Official's aura was obviously different. Could it be that he has broken through to the Martial Emperor realm? Du Xiaofu thought to himself. Qin Official had most likely broken through to the Martial Emperor realm. His Mirage Martial vein was not ordinary. He had to be careful. Discussions broke out in the surroundings. Many elders on the high platform lowered their heads and exchanged pleasantries. On the other hand, the strongest young disciples from the various palaces were all standing quietly at this moment. They did not move or sway, and their temperaments were outstanding. Every single one of them had outstanding grace. Only Official Qin, who was in a snow-white robe, stared at Du Xiaofu with his long and narrow eyes. He didn't try to hide the coldness in his eyes. From the exchange of pleasantries between the elders, It could be seen that the Merak Palace, Tianji Palace, and Migres Palace had a good relationship. The relationship between the Yuheng Palace and the Alcade Palace should not be weak. Lastly, the Dubhe Palace and the Mizar Palace were a little lonely. However, the Seven-Star Hall was still known as the Seven-Star Hall to the outside world. Behind this unfamiliarity, they were extremely warm on the surface. Only Ko Jixiang, Elder Zhang, and the rest were extremely cold towards Elder Zhu Xiu, especially Ko Jixiang, who did not seem to notice Elder Zhu Xiu. Everyone seemed to know about the confrontation between Elder Zhu Xiu and Elder Ko Jixiang in Daki City. This time, no one mentioned it. Although they saw it, they did not show it. After a while, Elder Ko Jixiang glanced at Elder Zhu Xiu and cupped his hands to the other elders. "Everyone, please take a seat. It's almost time. Please." Everyone cupped their hands together, after which, the leaders all landed on the large golden chairs. However, the first to sit in the Migres Hall had always been Du Xiaofu. He had long since attracted the secret attention of quite a number of gazes. As everyone sat down, the exchange of pleasantries on the high platform began to quiet down. Ko Jixiang raised his head and looked at the sky. Then, he slowly looked around. His gaze swept across, and an invisible aura spread out. The surrounding mountains, which were in an uproar that rushed to the clouds, gradually became completely silent under the ripple of that invisible aura. "Everyone, today is an auspicious day for the Seven Stars Hall's grand meeting of the Seven Stars Hall, and it represents the strength of the strongest younger generation of our Seven Stars Hall. Thank you for coming to Tianheng Mountain. However, I hope that everyone will abide by the rules of my Yuheng Hall during the grand meeting. Don't cause any disturbances to the grand meeting." Ko Jixiang's voice reverberated throughout the mountains. His indifferent voice was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing the eardrums of those who were slightly weaker to tremble. The profound energy within their bodies almost stagnated, while the bodies of those who were slightly stronger trembled. These words were extremely domineering and threatening, but no one could resist. In the spirit domain, no one dared to say anything in front of Yuheng Hall. Moreover, the Seven Palace Conference was attended by all 7 halls of the Seven-Star Hall. Who would dare to cause trouble at the Seven Palace Conference? The surroundings were quiet and echoes resounded. Seeing that no one spoke, Ko Jixiang revealed a satisfied smile and continued, "The Seven Palace Conference is held once every 30 years. The rules are still the same. Each hall will send their strongest disciple to participate. Anyone who is of suitable age in the spirit domain can also participate. The first round is a free-for-all. After the last 4 people are left, the final winner will be held. Now, all participants can enter." As his voice fell, Ko Jixiang waved his hand slightly. A clear bell chime resounded through the high platform and reverberated in the surrounding mountains. "It has begun." As the bell chime resounded, the surrounding mountains cheered and the sound was like a boiling cauldron. Whoosh whoosh. At this moment, from the surrounding mountains, many young figures flashed into the field and finally appeared around the square in picturesque disorder. There were more than 100 people. Each of them had an extraordinary aura and looked at each other cautiously. Following the appearance of these people, the spectators in the surrounding mountains erupted into fiery cheers. The sound waves that could topple mountains and overturn seas rushed into the sky, causing the space to tremble. "They are all extraordinary." Du Xiaofu looked at the square. The hundreds of young men and women had appeared. Many of them had the aura of martial king realm cultivation. Their talents were definitely not weak. These were probably the top disciples cultivated by other forces in the spirit domain. There might even be a dark horse among these young men and women. As the participants entered the field, Dongli Diao, Lin Weiqi, Officer Qin, and the others on the high platform looked at each other slightly. The 6 of them seemed to have reached a tacit understanding. Their figures moved slightly, and suddenly, they jumped off the high platform and crossed the space. Finally, they quietly landed in the center of the square. As the 6 people entered, some of the surrounding young men and women automatically retreated a little. There was fear in their eyes. They did not want to be too close to these people. As the real protagonists of this Seven Palace Conference, the entrance of these 6 people caused the cheers around the mountains to surge to the highest level. Faintly, The names of these 6 people could be heard. It was obvious that these 6 people were already famous in the entire spirit domain. Young Palace Master, it's time for you to enter. Elder Zhu Xiu was sitting beside Du Xiaofu. Seeing that Lin Weiqi and the others had all entered, he whispered in Du Xiaofu's ear. Chapter 829. Yes. Du Xiaofu nodded. He waved his hand and lightly patted the seat. At the same time, his figure soared into the sky. His figure was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, and his figure drifted into the arena without causing any sound. With Du Xiaofu's entrance, the atmosphere on the high platform fluctuated slightly. Everyone present knew that the mysterious young man was rumored to be the personal disciple of the Weapon Lord. He had already been recognized by the Migres Palace. However, no one knew if this was true or not. Perhaps the Migres Palace had done this on purpose. As Du Xiaofu entered the field, Lin Weiqi, Dongli Diao, and a few others glanced at Du Xiaofu intentionally or unintentionally. A gloomy gaze shot out from the crowd. It was Qin Guan of the Yuheng Palace. Du Xiaofu glanced sideways at Officer Qin. Under the mask, there was a hint of coldness in the eyes. Elder Zhu Xiu, it is said that Xiao Feng is the personal disciple of the Weapon Lord. Has the Migres Palace already recognized him? Elder Cloud Leopard of the Mizang Palace swept his gaze across the field and finally looked at Elder Zhu Xiu on the high platform. Of course, the young palace master has already been recognized by the Migres Palace. He is the personal disciple of the palace master. There is no doubt about this. Elder Zhu Xiu nodded and said, the personal disciple of the Weapon Lord is naturally extraordinary. It is said that when the Weapon Lord was still alive, his cultivation was sky-high and his name was known throughout the central region. I think we can see the glory of the Weapon Lord from the young palace master today. Elder Yao Xing of the Alcade Palace said. The starry patterns on his clothes released pressure. Elder Zhu Xiu smiled and said, although the young master is the direct disciple of the palace lord, he is still a young man. In the Myriad Weapons Conference, it is already not easy for him to win the championship by refining a high-grade Dao tool at the level of perfection 6 stars. This time, the 7 Palaces Conference will be filled with the strongest experts of the younger generation. I think Lin Weiqi of the Dubhe Palace and Dongli Diao of the Mizar Palace have already reached the level of Emperor. They will definitely be the focus of this 7 Palaces Conference. Elder Zhu Xiu smiled. Although he knew the strength of the young palace master, his words were very flexible. After all, Lin Weiqi, Dongli Diao, and the others were not simple people. If he was not mistaken, they had already stepped into the Emperor realm. Hearing Elder Zhu Xiu's words, everyone present knew that it was already abnormal for a perfect 6-star talisman master to be able to refine a high-grade Dao artifact. Everyone present had already heard about everything that had happened during the Myriad Weapon Conference. Even if Xiao Feng was unable to become the champion of the 7 Halls Conference, no one would dare to underestimate him. After all, there was a difference in battle strength between talisman masters and martial cultivators and monstrous beasts. Moreover, Xiao Feng was only a perfect 6-star talisman master. It seems that Elder Zhu Xiu has quite a lot of confidence in Xiao Feng. I am also curious about the personal disciple of the Weapon Lord. I hope that I can see the glory of the Weapon Lord today. Elder Chui Fu of the Sky Pivot Hall lightly smiled. Her eyes were bright. Compared to when she was young, she was also a peerless beauty. Then, she looked at Ko Jixiong and said, intentionally or unintentionally, official Qin of the Yuheng Hall has improved quite a bit. I believe that the Yuheng Hall must have put in quite a bit of effort for this 7 Halls Conference. Hearing that, Ko Jixiong had a faint smile on his face and said to Elder Chui Fu, Elder Chui Fu, what are you saying? It is difficult for my disciple to be compared to Lin Weiqi of the Sky Pivot Hall and Dongli Diao of the Mizang Hall. Fortunately, he did not disappoint us. For this 7 Halls Conference, my Yuheng Hall also wants to do its part for the 7-star Hall. Moreover, the champion will be able to obtain some benefits. We, as seniors, can only help a little. As for the final result, we can only let the young people fight for it themselves. Elder Ko is exaggerating. Official Qin has the phantom martial vein. This time, I reckon that he must have stepped into the Emperor realm. He, Lin Weiqi, and Dongli Jiao have the highest chance of winning. This time, Yuheng Hall may be the champion. Elder Yun Zichin's gaze paused on official Qin for a while. Then she said to Elder Ko Jixiong, Elder Zichin is overpraising. Official Qin's phantom martial vein is not weak, but Dong Li Diao's body is his greatest reliance. Lin Wei Qi's raging flame martial vein is also strange and unpredictable. Even in the entire central continent, she is also an outstanding talent among the younger generation. I'm afraid that the final result will be difficult to determine. There was a smile in Ko Jixiong's eyes. However, there was also a trace of pride in his eyes that was difficult to detect. He naturally had quite a lot of confidence in his disciple for this 7 Halls Grand Meeting. Moreover, his disciple had a lot of trump cards for this 7 Halls Grand Meeting. Elder Zhuxiu didn't know whether to agree or disagree with Ko Jixiong's words, so he didn't say much. On the other hand, Elder Yin Xuanlong and Elder Yao Xing frowned slightly. This time, whether it was Fecta Hall's Wu Ma Shang or Alcade Hall's Sun Wu, they seemed to be slightly inferior compared to Lin Wei Qi and Dong Li Diao. It seemed that Fecta Hall and Alcade Hall were already supporting characters in this 7 Halls conference. The losers of the 7 Halls conference will have to leave. Otherwise, they will be responsible for their own lives. Now, on behalf of the 7-Star Hall, I declare that the 7 Halls conference has officially begun. Ko Jixiong stood up again and waved his hand. His voice reverberated. Boom. At this moment, the sound of a bell rang through the mountains and reverberated through the clouds. Around the mountains, cheers resounded through the 9 heavens. In the square, all eyes were on alert. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. In the center of the square, Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across the entire place. Over 100 young men and women were young, but their auras were exceptionally strong. All of them were people with outstanding talent. There were even a few outstanding auras among them. Of course, those who dared to participate in the 7 Halls conference and show their faces in the 7 Halls conference were definitely not ordinary people. Their talent and strength were outstanding, and they all had extraordinary forces behind them. Although the 7-Star Hall was the strongest force in the spirit realm, there were also many forces that were extremely strong. They were only slightly weaker than the 7-Star Hall. Du Xiaofu sighed inwardly. Looking at these 100 young men and women, it wasn't hard to know that the entire spirit realm was full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It wasn't inferior to the Central Plains. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many young geniuses gathered in the spirit realm. Huff huff. In the tense atmosphere, everyone in the square looked at each other. The first round was a free-for-all. In this situation, no one wanted to be the first to act. As long as they stayed in the square, they might be able to take advantage of the situation and obtain the next victory. All eyes were on the 7 people of the 7-Star Hall, who were the most vigilant. Most of their gazes stopped on Lin Weiqi, Dong Li Diao, Qin Guan, and the others. Everyone knew that these people were the strongest. If they wanted to make a name for themselves in the 7-Star Hall, they had to defeat these people. Everyone, let's work together and deal with the people of the 7-Star Hall first. In the tense atmosphere, a young man in luxurious clothes said loudly. His aura fluctuated as he suggested that they work together to deal with the people of the 7-Star Hall. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any chance of winning. You're courting death. Indifferent words came out of Dong Li Diao's mouth. His eyes suddenly flashed. His feet touched the ground, and a burst of aura gushed out. His figure was like lightning as he rushed towards the young man who had just fanned the flames. The tense atmosphere was about to explode. As Dong Li Diao made his move, the tense atmosphere in the square was shattered. In an instant, waves of profound qi of different colors burst out. Vigorous profound qi surged in the square and soared into the sky. Rumble. In just an instant, the square was completely engulfed in a chaotic battle. Almost 100 martial king realm auras filled the square and swept across the square. The tyrannical energy wreaked havoc. If it wasn't for the suppression of the talisman array, the square and the high platform would have been razed to the ground. Roar, clang clang. Beasts roared and talisman weapons and Dao weapons were used. The terrifying energy made the square feel oppressive. Profound qi surged and spread out. Rumbling sounds like muffled thunder resounded in all directions. It was a chaotic battle. Wu Ma Shang of the Fekta Hall, Yu Bai of the Merak Hall, Qingguan of the Aliath Hall, and Sun Wu of the Alcade Hall made their moves one after another. Originally, the young men and women intended to join forces to deal with the disciples of the Seven-Star Hall. However, in the chaotic battle, they were like a sheet of loose sand. Every one of them was like a frightened bird. As long as there was someone beside them, they would involuntarily protect themselves and violently attack those who were close to them. In a short period of time, many people were directly injured and had no choice but to leave. If they continued to join the battle, they would not just be injured in the end. There were also some powerful cultivators who were unlucky enough to be besieged. In the end, they had no choice but to leave the square with regret and quickly leave. Sigh, Du Xiaofu sighed. These young men and women were extremely powerful. If they could really join forces, Dongli Diao and Qingguan would not be able to do anything to them. Even if they wanted to do anything to them, they would at least have to pay a great price. It should be known that even a martial royal realm expert would have to retreat if he was besieged by 100 martial king realm experts. At this moment, in the chaotic battle, the hundreds of extraordinary young men and women were defeated by themselves. The chaotic battle was a kind of hot-blooded catalyst. The shocking sound of the explosion resounded in the square. Countless onlookers from the surrounding mountains burst into cheers. Chapter 830. The earth-shattering cheers were the strongest catalyst for these young men and women. Instantly, all of them gave it their all. The chaotic battle had reached the craziest stage. All of them only had their opponents in their eyes. They only wanted to defeat their opponents. Come on, defeat him. The deafening cheers resounded through the clouds. The young spectators raised their arms and cheered until their necks were red. They wished that they had the ability to join in. In this crazy chaotic battle, Du Xiaofu maintained his rationality. He shook his head helplessly. His gaze swept across the square. However, he saw that in the entire square, only Lin Weiqi from the Alpha Hall had yet to make a move. Lin Weiqi's red clothes moved like fire. Under the sweeping force, the red clothes on her body seemed to be dancing like flames. The faintly discernible aura that was emitted from her graceful and delicate body made it so that no one dared to get close to the chaotic battle. As if she felt Du Xiaofu's gaze, Lin Weiqi looked at Du Xiaofu. Her bright eyes rippled a little. Then, her gaze swept across the battlefield. Roar! In the chaotic battlefield, the beasts roared. Some people activated their pulse spirits. Their Xian Qi swept across like a storm. None of the people present were weak. However, in this chaotic battle, there was an endless stream of people who were severely injured and left the square. However, the Seven-Hall Conference had its own rules. As long as someone in the square admitted defeat and left the square, no one would attack them. In less than 10 minutes, 3/5 of the hundreds of people fighting in the square had already been eliminated. Dongli Diao, Officer Qin, Sun Wu, and the others were defeated wherever they went. It was difficult for them to be a match for them. In this chaotic battle, the disciples from the Seven Stars Hall seemed to have an invisible tacit understanding. They would first take the initiative to finish off the others. In this aspect, it was much better than the other young men and women who were like a sheet of loose sand. Swish! Finally, in the midst of the chaos, someone took aim at the leisurely Du Xiaofu. The sword in his hand was an elementary-grade Dao weapon. The sword light swept across the sky and directly slashed at Du Xiaofu. In the midst of the chaos, the young man's eyes were bloodshot. Bang! In the next moment, the young man did not even know what had happened. The low-grade Dao artifact in his hand had already disappeared without a trace. His chest was in intense pain, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He fiercely smashed into the ground 30 meters away. He struggled a few times, but did not get up again. Du Xiaofu took care of one of the opponents who rushed up to him. With his current strength, there was indeed no need for him to deal with these young men and women in the Martial King realm. He glanced around and found that there were less than 30 people in the square. A young man with a strong body like a bear caught Du Xiaofu's attention. The young man looked to be about 22 or 23 years old. He looked dull, but his cultivation was at the Martial King realm. The robust young man waved the quaint big axe in his hand and blocked the siege of 3 martial kings at the Nirvana realm and one at the same cultivation level. Du Xiaofu observed carefully. The robust young man's strength was extraordinary. He seemed to be clumsy and on the verge of collapsing under the siege, but he was able to turn danger into safety. The young man's clumsy body gave off an ethereal feeling. He only had the form but not the spirit. However, he was able to turn danger into safety by relying on his body movement. Wave-like carefree steps. It's the wave-like carefree steps. Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly trembled. He clearly saw the traces of the wave-like carefree steps from the young man's seemingly clumsy body movement. In Du Xiaofu's mind, he suddenly thought of that fairy-like woman. Her beautiful figure appeared in his mind. The wave-like carefree steps was taught to him by the lady named Dongli Qingqing. He did not know why it appeared on the robust young man. Could it be that he was related to Dongli Qingqing? Besieged by several people, the robust young man was getting more and more strenuous. Du Xiaofu's eyes moved under the mask. Then, he opened his mouth slightly and sent out a sound transmission. Don't fly fast like a duck, drifting like a god. Wave-like subtle steps, Luo Xiong generates dust. The robust young man who was in the middle of a fierce battle was stunned. He waved the ancient big axe in his hand and looked around. Finally, his eyes fell on Du Xiaofu. Don't be in a daze. Pay attention to your body movement. Walk freely like a startled swan. Move impermanently. Be in danger and be in safety. Advance and stop difficult. Advance and return. Du Xiaofu's sound transmission continued to fall into the robust young man's ears. Bang, bang, bang. The robust young man's eyes lit up. Suddenly, his clumsy body movement became more and more agile. He actually faintly distorted the signs of defeat and began to turn defeat into victory. Seeing this, Du Xiaofu secretly smiled. The clumsy, robust young man was as strong as a bear. However, his comprehension was extremely strong. He was able to comprehend the wave-like carefree steps by relying on the mnemonic formula. It was enough to show that he was talented. His gaze quickly swept across the square. The number of people in the square was decreasing. Dongli Diao attacked the most and swept the square, causing everyone to be fearful. Sun Tian and Officer Qin's attacks were also not bad. Wherever they passed, no one could stop them. There were only a dozen people left in the square. As for Lin Weiqi, she did not attack at all. Hence, no one dared to go near her. Yu Bai and Wu Ma Shang stood together. The aura on their bodies was rippling. Whoever dared to go near them would be the first to receive the fiercest attack. As the number of people decreased, the chaos in the square and the sound of the explosion gradually calmed down. As if they felt the unusual silence, the 3 Martial King Realm Nirvana Realm and 1 Martial King Realm Complete Completion who were besieging the robust clumsy young man suddenly flashed away. Each of them looked at the square vigilantly. The 4 of them were panting heavily. Only then did they realize that they were the only ones left in the square. Their gazes suddenly turned solemn. Looking at the square, Du Xiaofu smiled bitterly. The few outstanding talents had been eliminated in the chaos. However, the robust young man and the other Martial King Realm Complete Completion were also outstanding talents. However, compared to Sun Tian, Yu Bai, Wu Ma Shang, and the rest, the remaining few people were still inferior. The last 5. Let's get rid of them. With a proud smile on his face, Dongli's aura surged. He stomped on the ground and directly pounced on the talented man in the Martial King realm who had besieged the clumsy and robust young man. Attack! Yu Bai, Wu Ma Shang, and Sun Tian moved together. As the last few people left, they did not need to worry about anything. You seem to be quite good. However, it's not enough. Qin official's voice was heard. His figure appeared in front of the robust young man like a ghost. His white robe was like snow, and his afterimage was like lightning. A streak of qi turned into a waterfall and swept through the space like a thunderbolt. Feeling a terrifying aura sweeping toward him, the robust young man's face darkened. He activated the wave-like carefree steps, and it was extremely dangerous. However, he managed to dodge Qin official's attack. Seeing that his opponent had dodged his attack, Qin official sneered. He changed his hand seal and moved his body. The afterimage was like a shadow following him. A palm print swept out and shrouded the robust young man. Walk freely and gracefully like a startled swan. Move unpredictably, if in danger, then in safety. The robust young man muttered and activated the wave-like carefree steps with all his might. He managed to dodge the strange palm print again by a hair's breadth. After 2 consecutive attacks, Qin official's face turned gloomy. His long and narrow eyes emitted a soft chill, and a terrifying aura rippled from his body. Do you think you can fool me by relying on your speed? It's far from enough. As his cold words were heard, Qin official's aura soared and his speed instantly increased by more than 10 times. The qi in his hand surged and condensed into a thunderbolt palm print. He slapped it toward the robust young man. At this moment, the robust young man seemed to have felt something. His face suddenly turned solemn. The ancient axe in his hand burst out with divine light. Chapter 831. Qi. The lightning-cold rune flew straight towards the muscular young man's forehead. It did not stop even though the muscular young man had admitted defeat. The muscular young man's expression changed, and he quickly dodged with the carefree steps. However, at this moment, Qin official did not hold back. Although the muscular young man had the carefree steps, there was a difference in cultivation level. Qin official was definitely not an ordinary person. Hence, it was hard for him to dodge. Whoosh! The cold Xianqi rune was like a poisonous snake that pierced a bloody hole in the muscular young man's shoulder. The muscular young man narrowly avoided the attack and turned to escape. However, he could not avoid the attack on his shoulder. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and the bloody hole in his shoulder was dripping with blood. His figure also directly staggered forward and flew out, brushing against the ground. If he did not rely on the carefree steps to avoid the attack on his vital parts, this muscular young man would have already died in this battle. The scene in the arena caused many people on the high platform to secretly change their expressions. There were also many empty curses from the surrounding mountains. The muscular young man had clearly admitted defeat, but Qin official still attacked ruthlessly. His actions were despicable. However, because Yuheng Hall was present, the surrounding spectators did not dare to curse too loudly. I have already admitted defeat. You still want to kill me? You are too shameless. If I were also in the martial royal realm, I would not be afraid of you at all. The muscular young man stood up and supported himself with the big axe in his hand. He looked at Qin official who was floating in the air with dissatisfaction in his eyes. Since you admit defeat, you should leave the arena. Since you are in the arena, then regardless of life or death, die. Qin official did not care about the empty curses from the surrounding mountains and the muscular young man's dissatisfaction. Instead, it completely aroused the murderous intent in his heart. After being unable to do anything to this young man several times, his murderous intent surged. Immediately, his figure flashed and his white clothes fluttered. A cunning and vicious fingerprint swept towards the muscular young man who could not dodge at all. Bastard, Yuheng Hall's Qin official is really fucking shameless. Does Yuheng Hall not care about its reputation anymore? In the face of the Qin official's blatant attempt to kill the robust young man, the surrounding mountains could not help but erupt with earth-shattering curses. This kind of scolding also caused Ko Jixiong's old face to secretly change from green to red. Some coldness secretly flashed across his eyes. Qi. In just a short moment, Qin Guan's face turned cold and gloomy. The winner was the king, and he never cared about the opinions of the weak. The fingerprint pierced through the air and went straight for the throat of the robust young man. It was as fast as lightning and as powerful as thunder. The robust young man couldn't avoid it anymore. He closed his eyes slightly and murmured with regret, "Grandpa village chief, uncles and aunties, I'm sorry. Stone can't become a great hero whose name shakes the world." The robust young man was waiting for death. His opponent was a martial emperor, and he knew that he was no match for him. However, he still had too many regrets in his heart. He hadn't fulfilled his wish yet, and he didn't want to die. At this moment, the familiar voice that had just been transmitted to the robust young man suddenly rang in his ears. "You fool, why didn't you come earlier? Why did you have to provoke such a shameless person?" When the voice sounded in his ears, the robust young man felt his entire body solidify. A figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The mysterious masked young man waved his hand, and a palm print blocked the fingerprint that was about to land on his throat. Chila, when the fingerprint and palm print collided, the space trembled slightly. Soon after, everything calmed down. The masked young man's body didn't move, but he had dissipated the fingerprint of Qingguan. Ding ding! Qingguan's body staggered back. A chill gushed out from his long and narrow eyes. He looked at Du Xiaofu, who had suddenly appeared, and words spurted out from between his teeth. Xiao Feng. The entire square was silent. Dongli Diao, Sun Wu, Wu Masheng, and the rest had already finished off their opponents. When they saw Du Xiaofu, who had suddenly intervened between Qingguan and the robust young man, their gazes moved slightly as they looked curiously at Du Xiaofu. On the high platform, the 7 hall experts also revealed a surprised expression. At this moment, all of them were focused on the square. Well done. In the surrounding mountains, the densely packed spectators were cheering excitedly. Thank you for saving me. The robust young man was stunned for a moment. Then, he cupped his hands together and thanked Du Xiaofu. He seemed to be surprised. The young man in front of him should be a disciple of the 7-star hall. Why would he save him? Go down and treat your injuries. This is as far as you can go. Du Xiaofu said to the robust young man. This young man was extraordinary, but this was as far as he could go. He couldn't go any further. All right, then be careful. The one who attacked me just now was a martial emperor. He was very shameless. You must be careful. The robust young man glared at Qingguan, whose face was filled with coldness, and turned to leave. He had just barely managed to save his life. He knew that he could only leave. Xiaofeng, what do you mean? Qingguan stared coldly at Du Xiaofu. The coldness in his eyes was undisguised. I understand the rules of the 7-hall conference. After admitting defeat, you can't continue to kill. Just now, someone admitted defeat, but you turned a deaf ear to it. This time, the 7-hall conference is organized by Yuheng Hall. As the representative of Yuheng Hall, it seems that Yuheng Hall's face has been completely disgraced by you. Du Xiaofu's indifferent voice reverberated. There was no courtesy at all. Last night, someone had sneakily attacked to test him. This time, Du Xiaofu did it on purpose. His voice was mixed with qi, enough for the entire mountain range to hear it clearly. However, when they heard Du Xiaofu's words, the faces of all the people from Yuheng Hall suddenly changed. It was equivalent to being slapped hard in the face. Everyone had seen the scene of Qingguan killing with their own eyes. However, with Qingguan's status in Yuheng Hall, killing a person was indeed not a big deal to Yuheng Hall. The experts of the 7 halls on the high platform would not blame Yuheng Hall for this. They would turn a blind eye to it. After all, there was no need to blame Yuheng Hall for a stranger. However, no one had expected that Xiaofo would appear in the end. His words immediately caused the entire Yuheng Hall to be unable to get off the stage. I didn't hear him admit defeat. Since he has admitted defeat, he should get off the stage. If he stays on the stage, he should not care about his life or death. Otherwise, if he is killed, it is because he is not strong enough. It is purely a disgrace. Qingguan said gloomily. Looking at Du Xiaofu, there was an unsuppressible coldness in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, You came to participate in the 7-hall conference to win the championship. In order to obtain the benefits, why do you have to pretend to be a good person? Yuheng Hall is lower than I imagined. You have really thrown away the face of Yuheng Hall. In the 7-star hall, there is such a shameless person like you. Even the other 6 halls of the 7-star hall have been dragged down. Du Xiaofu looked at Qingguan and said coldly. He had always wanted to kill this person. Haha, well said. Upon hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the surrounding mountains immediately erupted into an uproar. I liked Xiaofeng's character. Dongli Jiao looked at the confrontation between Qingguan and Du Xiaofu and smiled faintly. Towards Qingguan, there was an undisguised disdain in his eyes. Sun Wu, Yu Bai and Wu Masheng smiled faintly and did not say anything. Lin Weiqi glanced at Du Xiaofu intentionally. Her bright eyes were calm, and there was not much fluctuation in them. Arrogant brat. On the high platform, Ko Jixiong could not help but snort. His old face was already green and red. The 7-hall conference has its own rules. Everyone knows that. It is better for certain people not to affect the reputation of the seven-star hall. Elder Zhu Xiu said faintly. Everyone naturally knew what he was referring to. It was just that they had turned a blind eye to what had just happened. Humph, Ko Jixiong snorted. This matter was indeed somewhat unreasonable. Hence, he could not say anything more. On the field, Qin Guan's face was cold. His long and narrow eyes were like a poisonous snake. He stared at Du Xiaofu with a ferocious expression and said, Xiao Feng, you are only relying on the title of revered weapon to swindle people. Without the title of revered weapon, you are nothing. I know very well what kind of person I am. I also know that without the title of Yuheng Hall, you are nothing. Du Xiaofu said with a faint smile. Ha ha. Official Qin laughed out loud. However, when he stopped laughing, his face was extremely dark and cold. The anger in his heart could no longer be suppressed due to the mockery. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said in a dark voice, Xiaofeng, since you believe that I am only relying on the name of Yuheng Hall, do you have the courage to fight with me? Hearing Qin Guan's words, on the high platform, Ko Jixiong's eyes trembled and his expression changed slightly. You should admit defeat as soon as possible. Just like last time, you should run for your life. Du Xiaofu said with disdain in his eyes. Has Qin Guan been defeated by Xiao Feng before? Hearing this, Dongli Diao, Sun Wu, and the others were surprised. They seemed to be able to get a lot of information from Qin Guan's words. Noticing the looks in Dongli Diao, Sun Wu, Wu Mashang, Yu Bai, and the others' eyes, Qin Guan's face turned cold. He smiled viciously and said word by word, Xiao Feng, in today's battle, you are responsible for your own life and death. If you don't dare, kowtow to me 3 times and leave as soon as possible. This is a bit too much. At this moment, the experts from the 7 halls on the high platform were secretly exchanging glances with each other, their gazes fixed on the field. Chapter 832. This was going overboard. Everyone wanted to know if Xiao Feng, the disciple of the rumored weapon venerable, would dare to accept Officer Qin's challenge. Life and death is his own responsibility. This is a battle of life and death. Migres Palace and Alioth Palace have been rumored to be in conflict for a long time. This battle of life and death is probably a way for the 2 palaces to resolve their conflict. Xiao Feng is rumored to be the disciple of the weapon venerable. Would he dare to accept Officer Qin's challenge? The countless onlookers on the surrounding mountains all looked at each other in dismay. No one had expected to see such an episode in the 7 Palaces Conference. Migres Palace's Xiao Feng and Alioth Palace's Qin Guan were going to have a battle of life and death. This was definitely a rare scene. However, no one knew if Xiao Feng dared to accept the challenge. Under everyone's gaze, Du Xiaofu lifted his head slightly and looked at Officer Qin in the distance. His clear eyes under the mask suddenly showed a hint of a smile. A trace of coldness flashed across his eyes as he said, All right, life and death is his own responsibility. Deal. As Du Xiaofu's words left his mouth, Dongli Diao, Sun Wu, and the others were shocked again. Defeat Officer Qin in a battle of life and death. Defeat Officer Qin, that shameless fellow. As Du Xiaofu's words left his mouth, countless people in the surrounding mountains instantly felt their blood boiling. Many of the onlookers were already dissatisfied with Officer Qin and secretly despised him. When they saw Xiao Feng accepting the challenge, they immediately became excited. On the high platform, Elder Ko Jixiong's alternating red and green face flashed with coldness. Although he knew that Xiao Feng was not an ordinary person, Ko Jixiong still had confidence in his disciple this time. This time, not only did his disciple not disappoint him, but he had successfully stepped into the martial royal stage. More importantly, after stepping into the martial royal stage, his illusory pulse soul had improved a lot. His human king talent had increased, and there were signs of him stepping into the human emperor stage. In the future, as long as his disciple Officer Qin had enough time, he would have the opportunity to step into the human emperor stage. Even in the past, when his disciple was only at the peak of the perfect martial emperor realm, his disciple would be able to fight against a martial dominator realm cultivator at all costs. Today, Qin Guan had truly stepped into the martial emperor realm. His martial veins had improved, and he had prepared a trump card to deal with Qiao Feng. He definitely had a chance to deal with Qiao Feng. Ko Jixiong sneered inwardly. How could he not know what his disciple was thinking? He was purposely trying to provoke Qiao Feng's temper so that he could kill him openly at the Seven Palaces assembly. However, all of this had happened much earlier than the original plan. The original plan was to deal with Qiao Feng only when the four of them were left. As Du Xiaofu nodded, Dongli Diao, Sun Wu, Wu Mashang, and Yu Bai took a step back. Lin Weiqi glanced at Du Xiaofu, her eyebrows twitching slightly as ripples appeared in her eyes. That brother Qiao Feng offended Officer Qin because of me. Don't let anything happen to him. Otherwise, I would be letting him down. Outside the arena, the robust young man who had already left the arena looked at the arena and rubbed his hands anxiously. He felt that the life and death battle between the young man called Qiao Feng and official Qin was all for him, and this made him feel very uneasy. Qiao Feng, this day has finally come. Today is not the same as before. Today, you will pay back the debt you owe me 100 times over. Many people in the arena looked at Officer Qin with a gloomy face as he slowly walked towards Du Xiaofu. With every step he took, the aura on his body became denser. After taking 9 consecutive steps, Qin official's aura reached its peak. The aura of a martial emperor who had just ascended to the martial emperor realm swept out without reservation. Boom! The aura of a martial emperor initial stage swept out like a storm, shaking the entire arena. Given Officer Qin's age, he had already stepped into the martial emperor initial stage. With such talent, he would definitely be outstanding even in the entire central region. Indeed, he has reached the martial emperor initial stage. Dongli Diao murmured softly. There was a slight fluctuation in his proud eyes. Martial emperor initial stage. Officer Qin has reached the martial emperor initial stage. The countless onlookers in the surrounding mountains were also shocked at this moment. On the high platform, the experts of the 7 palaces were also secretly shocked. Rumble. A terrifying aura swept out like a storm. Officer Qin's aura spread out. That was the aura of a human king, which made the people around feel depressed. Those who were not strong enough wanted to crawl. Qiao Feng, I am no longer the same as before. I have already stepped into the martial emperor initial stage. Now, I will give you another chance. As long as you kowtow to me 3 times, I will consider letting you go today. What do you think? Hee hee. Officer Qin laughed coldly. His laughter reverberated in the sky. Du Xiaofu took a step forward. At this moment, in front of Officer Qin's surging martial emperor initial stage aura, he did not move at all. Only his long black hair danced in the wind. He raised his head slightly and looked directly at Officer Qin. He said, "A martial emperor like you cannot withstand a single blow." His voice was like the roar of a beast. It shook the clouds and made the hearts of countless people tremble. At this moment, Du Xiaofu stepped into the square. His aura was no longer the same. He stood tall and straight. His aura was overbearing and domineering. The gaze under the mask seemed to be looking down on Officer Qin. That Qiao Feng seems to have changed. Could it be that he has been hiding all this time? Elder Yao Xing of the Alcade Palace looked at the square and muttered softly. Why do I feel that Qiao Feng is the hunter, luring the snake out of its hole? Elder Yun Bao of the Mizang Palace muttered softly. He looked at the square with a meaningful gaze. Seeing Du Xiaofu ignore him and look at him with contempt, Officer Qin's sinister expression became extremely intense. The killing intent in his eyes soared as he said, "Qiao Feng, you owe me. Today, you will pay me back 100 times over. I will make you regret provoking me." After Officer Qin said those words filled with killing intent, his figure trembled. A terrifying aura rippled out and his figure turned into a white lightning bolt, directly rushing towards Du Xiaofu. Wherever Officer Qin passed, his martial emperor initial stage aura surged. Talisman script spread out like a surging ocean. It was absolutely horrifying. Du Xiaofu pushed off the square with the tip of his foot and retreated rapidly in front of Officer Qin. His figure seemed to have turned into a purple lightning bolt. You can't escape. You are a martial king after all. Officer Qin shouted coldly and waved his hand. At this moment, he erupted with his true, terrifying strength. Talisman scripts flickered around his body, and a crystal-clear palm print condensed. It was like a mountain pressing down on Du Xiaofu. The palm print condensed the energy of heaven and earth with an ancient aura, as if it could suppress everything. So what if you are a martial emperor? I am a martial emperor, a martial emperor. I have killed many martial emperors like you. Your father, Emperor Chu Jiang, was one of them. Du Xiaofu's eyes under the mask were calm and radiant. He was like a martial emperor. With a wave of his hand, an illusory image of a swan and eye was formed. As if it wanted to tear the sky apart, it directly tore Officer Qin's palm print in half, turning into broken talisman scripts and dissipating. Xiaofeng, I will never let you go. Officer Qin became more and more furious. A terrifying aura surged. At the moment when the palm print was broken, he waved his hand and a fist print directly swooped down. The terrifying fist print was like a meteorite rushing down. The force swept down and shattered the sky, as if it was going to explode Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu's eyes under the mask were calm and slightly cold. With a wave of his hand, a green and red light exploded and the illusory image of a scarlet cloud dragon appeared again. Roar! The dragon's roar resounded, and an invisible pressure quickly spread in all directions, causing the 7 martial emperors on the high platform to be slightly stunned. Whoosh! The illusory image of the scarlet cloud dragon collided with the fist print and directly blocked it. A large number of talisman scripts surged and spread. This Xiaofeng is indeed extraordinary to be able to fight Officer Qin, a martial emperor, head-on with his beast. That level of beast energy comprehension must have reached an extraordinary level. It's extraordinary. On the high platform, Elder Yun Ziqin, Elder Yin Xuanlong, and the others were secretly moved. After being unable to shake Du Xiaofu with 2 consecutive moves, Officer Qin's expression became colder and colder. It seemed that he had long been mentally prepared. He knew that Du Xiaofu was extraordinary. With a cold expression, his hand seals began to change, and his pulse spirit began to be activated. Roar! Officer Qin's pulse spirit was an ancient tiger wolf. It was both a tiger and a wolf, and it roared ferociously. It was ranked high on the heavenly beast list. Its terrifying roar rumbled, and its pressure swept out. Suppress. Officer Qin stepped into the air. At that moment, his martial emperor realm pulse spirit was psychic. The terrifying ancient tiger wolf roared and rushed towards Du Xiaofu. Dazzling talisman scripts flashed, and its ferocious aura shrouded Du Xiaofu. It wanted to tear Du Xiaofu apart. Du Xiaofu looked at the terrifying pulse spirit and waved his hand. In the center of his palm, dazzling talisman scripts condensed into a stalk of grass that flew out. The stalk of grass was crystal clear, and the shape of the grass was like a mushroom. It was as if it was real. As the stalk of grass flew out, a terrifying pressure descended from the sky above the square. It even made people feel as if their vitality was being sucked out, and their pulse spirits trembled. The stalk of grass seemed to be able to destroy stars and destroy living beings. It's the ultimacy of the undead grass. On the high platform, the experts from the 7 palaces were shocked. It was the ultimacy of the undead grass. Rumble. The undead grass spun, and a terrifying power swept out and directly engulfed the illusory image of the ancient tiger wolf. At that moment, under the power of the undead grass, the ancient tiger wolf's eyes were filled with fear. It wanted to break free from the power of the undead grass. However, the power of the undead grass grew stronger and stronger. It seemed as if it was going to devour all the vitality in the space and destroy everything. Then, it directly swallowed the illusory image of the ancient tiger wolf and destroyed it into broken talisman scripts. Chapter 833. Pucci, Qin official was shocked. He didn't expect his pulse spirit to be so weak. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Du Xiaofu's eyes flashed with coldness. Waves of invisible light shot out from his body and disappeared into the air like lightning. Rumble. At the same time, a terrifying aura exploded from Qin official's body. It turned into a dazzling talisman and finally formed the image of a large bell. The talisman on the large bell flashed and covered Qin official's entire body. When the large bell image appeared, the shocking pressure swept out like a tide. It was ancient, and the pressure made people's hearts tremble. What a terrifying pressure! At this moment, the countless spectators around the mountains were all trembling. The talisman weapons in their bodies were also trembling. The terrifying pressure that spread out from the large bell image seemed to be able to crush everything. It was like a mountain pressing down on one's soul, releasing a huge pressure. Heavenly God Bell. That's the Heavenly God Bell of Alioth Hall. Alioth Hall actually gave the Heavenly God Bell to Qin official. Heavenly God Bell. That's an elementary grade Dharma artifact. It specializes in protecting soul attacks. With the Heavenly God Bell, it can protect one's soul from being destroyed. As the large bell image appeared, the expressions of the 7 hall experts on the high platform changed. That was the treasure of Alioth Hall. It was a true elementary grade Dharma artifact. Ko Jixiong sneered. That was the treasure of Alioth Hall. It specialized in protecting the soul against talisman masters. With the Heavenly God Bell, his disciple was almost invincible. Xiao Feng's soul power was not ordinary, but it was useless in front of the Heavenly God Bell. It's actually the Heavenly God Bell. Looking at the large bell image that Qin official had activated, Lin Weiqi, Dongli Diao, and the others' eyes were filled with shock. Dang dang. 3 small needle-like objects appeared. They spread out talisman scripts and rippled with the pressure of a middle-grade Dharma artifact. If one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice. At this moment, they were blocked by the large bell image. The flames that surged out were unable to break through the large bell image's defense. Hee, Xiao Feng, are you surprised? Are you surprised that you can't plot against me? Your Tao treasure is useless. Under my heavenly divine bell, you can't hurt me. You can't hurt me. Officer Qin sneered coldly. The faint trace of blood at the corner of his mouth made him look even more ferocious. A stream of light flashed out from between his eyebrows and turned into an ancient bell the size of a palm. It released a peerless pressure that could topple mountains and overturn seas. I've long been on guard against you. Your plot is useless. What other methods do you have to contend against me? Officer Qin walked towards Du Xiaofu step by step. The ancient bell in his hand turned into a rune bell shadow that hovered around him, enveloping his body. At this moment, wherever Qin official's figure passed by, the large bell spiraled like an ancient mountain of runes. It pressed down on the vast sky, causing space to explode, as if it wanted to crush everything. Du Xiaofu waved his hand, and the 3 soul-destroying spirit needles were taken back into his body. He stepped into the air, and his long black hair swayed behind his head, giving off an overbearing aura. He was confronting Officer Qin with his own aura. Are you out of tricks? Then everything will end today. Being able to die under my divine sky bell is not a grievance for you. Officer Qin sneered, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. The divine sky bell shadow moved horizontally, and its terrifying aura caused the entire void to tremble. It directly pressed down on Du Xiaofu. On the high platform, Ko Jixiong sneered. The divine sky bell was given to Officer Qin after the assembly of the 7 palaces, and Officer Qin had broken through to the martial emperor realm. Now, with the divine sky bell, it would be difficult for Xiao Feng to contend against it. The divine sky bell is too strong. It is a true magic weapon that can suppress souls. It is the nemesis of spiritual talisman masters. Can Xiao Feng still contend against it? At this moment, the experts of the 7 palaces secretly gasped for Du Xiaofu. Officer Qin, who had activated the divine sky bell, had reached a terrifying level. Could Xiao Feng, who was only at the peak of the complete 6-star, really withstand it? Activating the divine sky bell, Officer Qin sneered, and his killing intent soared. Today, he could finally kill Xiao Feng. New grudges and old grudges were irreconcilable. To Officer Qin, he had to tear Xiao Feng into pieces today. Rumble. Under the suppression of the terrifying aura, the entire square rumbled. Under Officer Qin's activation, The vast and unparalleled aura from the divine sky bell enveloped Du Xiaofu. At this moment, under the suppression of the terrifying aura, the surrounding void had already rippled and exploded. Under everyone's gaze, Du Xiaofu moved. Instead of retreating, he advanced. He took a step forward, and the space trembled. He waved his hand and punched out. On the fist, lightning roared, and the space exploded. It was as if nothing could stop it. It was as if the space was about to be blasted apart by this terrifying punch. Boom! Du Xiaofu's punch did not retreat, and instead, he attacked the rune bell shadow. The terrifying aura was peerless, and it caused the rune bell shadow to stop in midair. Lightning wreaked havoc, and it trembled violently. It's only a beginner-grade magic weapon. Just blast it apart. As the cold words rang out, lightning flashed in Du Xiaofu's eyes under the mask. A terrifying aura swept across the surrounding space, and the surrounding space collapsed and sank. Lightning waves overflowed. Boom! With another punch, Du Xiaofu viciously punched the runic bell. He was completely unafraid of the pressure from the ritual implement on the divine sky bell. With your strength of a beginner martial king, you dare to activate this magic weapon when you haven't even completely merged with it. What a waste of this magic weapon! As the cold and disdainful words rang out, Du Xiaofu punched out again. Bang, bang, bang. In a short period of time, Du Xiaofu's punches were like raindrops, and they continuously bombarded the rune bell shadow. Every time Du Xiaofu threw a punch, the silhouette of the bell would vibrate intensely and break into pieces, along with a buzzing sound. That brat is actually using his physical strength to fight against the divine sky bell. There was no lack of people with extraordinary eyesight in the surroundings. At this moment, they were all shocked. Xiao Feng's strength was unbelievable. In front of everyone's eyes, Xiao Feng was using his physical strength to fight against the divine sky bell. How terrifying was that? If it was an ordinary peak, complete 6-star spirit talisman master, in front of the divine sky bell, even 100 of them would have their souls crushed. Even an ordinary martial royal realm mysterious level cultivator would not be able to fight against it at this moment. At this moment, Xiao Feng didn't seem like a spirit talisman master at all. Instead, he was like a peerless, ferocious beast, using his physical strength to fight against the divine sky bell. Looking at Xiao Feng's domineering strength, everyone couldn't help but hold their breaths. Their scalps went numb, and their hair stood on end. Do you think you can rely on the magic weapon to protect yourself? Just shatter it. Under the mask, Du Xiaofu's gaze was sharp. Although his voice was calm, it was incomparably domineering. Once again, his fist released terrifying lightning. The fist resonated with the energy of heaven and earth, causing lightning to flash and thunder to rumble in the sky. Out of nowhere, dark clouds rolled, causing people's hearts to tremble. Boom! When the fist landed, the rune bell that enveloped Qin official immediately cracked open, and lightning overflowed. Oh no! On the high platform, Ko Jixiong seemed to have felt something, and his face changed greatly. Crack, crack! Finally, the rune bell that enveloped Qin official directly cracked and turned into broken runes. It was as if it had evolved into a gorgeous scene, and the aura that spread out could be called destructive. At this moment, fear appeared in Qin official's shocked eyes once again. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Qin official was in a daze. His expression was cold, as if he still couldn't believe that his opponent could actually shatter his divine sky bell's protection. Xiao Feng, I'm not done with you. However, in this short moment, the resentment and coldness in Qin official's eyes exploded. After communicating with the martial vein, a terrifying aura gushed out from his body like a flood that had opened the floodgates. Rumble. Suddenly, Qin official's long and narrow eyes that were filled with cold killing intent in the sky were filled with a deep and majestic light. There was a strange and dazzling light that covered his entire body. A strange and mysterious rune crisscrossed on the surface of his body, but it was as if it was covered by a colorful light, sizzle, at the same time. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Qin official's figure transformed into 36 figures that were exactly the same. 36 figures that were exactly the same. Even the aura was the same. No matter how sharp one's soul power was, it was impossible to distinguish between the real and the fake. What kind of technique is this? Gulp, gulp. Looking at the strange scene, countless people in the surrounding mountains were shocked. All of them couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. At this moment, within the bodies of the 36 Qin officials, there was a huge pressure that came from the depths of their blood and soul. It made people's hearts tremble for no reason, and they wanted to prostrate themselves. The illusory martial vein is close to the human sovereign. Dongli Diao and Lin Weiqi looked at the Qin officials at this moment. Their eyes fluctuated again at this moment. Even Dongli Diao's eyes were slightly focused. What an extraordinary illusory martial vein. On the high platform, Elder Cloud Leopard of Mizang Palace secretly revealed a look of shock in his eyes. Xiao Feng, go to hell. The 36 Qin officials' killing intent surged at the same time. The 36 figures pounced on Du Xiaofu like 36 bolts of lightning. 36 terrifying auras of the initial stage of the martial monarch stage burst out. Among the 36 auras, there was only one that was real. However, at this moment, it was impossible to distinguish between the real and the fake. Initial stage of the martial monarch stage. Only the natural disposition of a human sovereign. Du Xiaofu raised his head. At this moment, the eyes under the mask shot out a blazing, thunderous light that shot into the thunderclouds in the sky as if it had materialized. At the same time, waves of majestic aura accompanied by rolling thunderbolts erupted from Du Xiaofu's body like a volcano. Boom! In an instant, dark clouds gathered in the sky out of nowhere. The space shook violently with a loud bang. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The terrifying thunder might filled the sky, and countless thunderbolts pierced through the space. Is that the thunder ultimacy? On the high platform, under the thunder might, the expressions of all the experts changed abruptly. Rumble. The silver snake shuttled through the sky, and the space exploded and overturned. The thunderbolts were connected to Du Xiaofu and continuously descended from the sky, directly enveloping the 36 Qin officials. The thunder might spread. Wherever the thunderbolts passed, everything was annihilated in an instant. Chapter 834. Those bolts of lightning caused the hairs on one's body to stand on end just by looking at the might of the lightning that spread out. The living beings in the surrounding mountains almost wanted to prostrate themselves on the ground. Bang, bang, bang. The terrifying thunderous power was destructive and could destroy everything. Out of the 36 figures of Qin official, 35 of them were instantly destroyed and exploded. The remaining figure of Qin official was once again shrouded by the divine sky bell, which turned into a ray of light. Break! Du Xiaofu's figure appeared. The moment he raised his hand, he clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. It was as if countless thunderbolts had appeared in front of him as he violently bombarded the divine sky bell. Boom! With such a terrifying power, even an ordinary martial royal realm mystery-level cultivator would be severely injured, if not killed. The divine sky bell roared and then shook as it was sent flying. Qin official spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered out. The corners of his mouth were already dripping with blood. Sizzle! Bolts of thunderbolts gathered in front of Du Xiaofu and turned his fist into a claw. His figure dashed out, and the thunderbolt claw print raged as it headed straight for Qin official. Oh no! On the high platform, Ko Jixiong's face turned gloomy. At this moment, Qin official's eyes were filled with fear. Everything that had happened today was beyond his expectations. Qin official did not expect that even though he had reached the martial royal realm and had a beginner-grade celestial bell, he would still be unable to contend with Xiao Feng. Perhaps at this moment, Qin official finally realized how terrifying Xiao Feng was. Chi-la-la, the thunderbolt claw print swept across the sky as if it was going to tear the space apart. Qin official could not dodge it, and a claw print was held on his neck. Xiao Feng, stop it. Qin official has been defeated. Stop it. On the high platform, Elder Ko Jixiong stood up at lightning speed and looked at Du Xiaofu in the sky above the square. His face was cold and his gaze changed as he shouted loudly. Du Xiaofu looked at Qin official, who was being held in his hand. Under the mask, There was a cold fluctuation in his eyes, and a faint killing intent flashed across his eyes. At this moment, in Qin official's eyes, he felt as if he was looking at the Grim Reaper. His skin suddenly tightened, and his hair stood on end. A feeling of fear involuntarily spread out from the depths of his heart. Whoosh! All of this happened in an instant. Within Du Xiaofu's claw mark, electric light wreaked havoc, and his 5 fingers clenched tightly. Gotcha! As Officer Qin's fearful eyes trembled, a cracking sound came from his neck. In the end, he could clearly feel that his head and neck had been broken. Ah! With a final scream, his neck was broken. Official Qin's body was separated from his body and fell to the ground in a pool of blood. His head rolled, filled with fear. He died with a grievance. All of this happened too quickly. Xiao Feng had killed the Qin official in a clean and swift manner, and no one could stop him. The entire square, both inside and outside, and within the mountains, fell silent. Many people's eyes trembled, and a chill spread from their bones. Official Qin is dead. He was really killed. Heavens, Xiao Feng really killed Official Qin. After a short moment of shock, the sound of people sucking in a breath of cold air rose and fell in succession around the arena. No one had expected that Xiao Feng would really kill Official Qin on the spot. On the high platform, the experts from the 7 halls were also shocked. They looked at each other, and their expressions changed. Xiao Feng really killed Official Qin. It was really beyond everyone's expectations. Luring the snake out of its hole and hitting it where it hurts. This Xiao Feng did it on purpose. He is really cunning, Elder Yao Xing from Alcade Hall muttered. He looked at the young man in purple armor in the air with a deep gaze. Too strong. Outside the square, the robust young man was so shocked that his mouth could fit a duck egg. He looked at Du Xiaofu with incomparable astonishment. At this moment, the ones with the most ugly expressions were the people from Alioth Hall. They had never expected that Official Qin, whom the entire hall had spent countless resources to nurture, would be killed mercilessly by Xiao Feng at this moment. Xiao Feng, you're courting death. Elder Ko Jixiong's body trembled. Seeing his beloved disciple's head separated from his body, he couldn't be more dead. His body trembled, and a chill spread from his eyes. His murderous voice resounded throughout the square. We agreed that he was responsible for his own life and death. He died because he was not as skilled as others. Du Xiaofu looked at Ko Jixiong. Although he knew that he was in Alioth Hall, but facing Official Qin, a person who wanted to kill him, Du Xiaofu did not hesitate at all. He had let him escape last time, and this time he struck first to gain the upper hand. A person who wanted to kill him, no matter where he was his biggest threat. The best way was to kill him on the spot. Otherwise, there would be no end of trouble. Just like Guyu from the Divine Light Court, Du Xiaofu would not show mercy. You're responsible for your own life and death. You clearly intended to kill him. You're provoking Alioth Hall. Ko Jixiong's face was gloomy, murderous intent surging in his eyes. The beloved disciple he had nurtured wholeheartedly and placed too much hope on was killed on the spot. How could he let this go? Du Xiaofu looked straight at Ko Jixiong and said with a cold smile, he wanted to kill me, but was killed by me instead. Is Alioth Hall really determined to be shameless today? It was a pity that he could not keep it in his bag at this moment. The conference of 7 halls will continue. On the plaza, a disciple of Alioth Hall collected Official Qin's corpse on the ground and left the plaza. Elder Zhang immediately stood up with an ugly expression, and his voice resounded throughout the plaza. The conference of 7 halls will continue. Countless onlookers in the surroundings heaved a sigh of relief. However, they knew in their hearts that after today, the grudge between Migres Hall and Alioth Hall would not be easily resolved. The expressions of the experts of the 7 halls on the high platform changed. They watched Ko Jixiong leave and did not say anything. Everyone could understand the feeling of watching one's beloved disciple being killed on the spot. Ko Jixiong naturally could not stay any longer. On the plaza, as Elder Zhang's voice fell, Lin Weiqi, Dongli Jiao, Yu Bai, Wu Mashang, and Sun Wu stepped forward. However, their gazes fell on Du Xiaofu intentionally or unintentionally. From the strength that Du Xiaofu had displayed when he killed Official Qin, The 5 of them could not help but pay attention to Du Xiaofu. Only 4 people will remain in the first round. 2 more people will need to leave. Yubai, Sima Sheng, you two should join forces and let us end the conference of 7 halls earlier. Dongli Diao looked at Yubai of Merak Hall and Wuma Sheng of Tianji Hall, as if he thought that these 2 were the weakest among the 6. Yubai and Wuma Sheng looked at each other and looked at Dongli Diao with fear in their eyes. There's no need to join forces. Merak Hall can still afford to lose. However, if you want to win, I'm afraid you will have to pay a price. Yubai looked at Dongli Diao. His handsome face was filled with determination and his aura fluctuated. He was at the peak of a 6-star talisman master and was almost a 7-star talisman master. As a talisman master, Yubai's combat strength was definitely not to be underestimated. He disdained to join forces with others to deal with Dongli Diao. Even if he won, it would be equivalent to losing. As the representative disciple of Merak Hall's younger generation, Yubai had his own pride. Chapter 835. That's right. No matter who wins, let's fight first. Wuma Sheng nodded. As the leader of the young disciples of Tianji Palace, even if he could not win, he could not give up without a fight. Let's finish this quickly. However, I don't need to take advantage of you. Lin Weiqi said. She moved forward, and her long legs moved. Her eyebrows were raised, and her red dress was like fire. She stared at Yubai from Tianji Palace. Looking at Lin Weiqi's gaze, Yubai felt bitter. He smiled bitterly. Dongli Diao's eyes moved. He knew that Lin Weiqi did not want to take advantage of him. She did not want him to fight alone. With a faint smile, Dongli Diao said to Lin Weiqi and Wuma Sheng, if that's the case, let's do it. Swish. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura fluctuated from his body. Runes flashed and Dongli Diao's body seemed to be covered in white flames. A powerful aura burst out, and he dashed towards Wuma Sheng. Go. Wuma Sheng looked serious. However, he did not retreat. He formed a seal with his hand, and it turned into a beam of light that shot towards Dongli Diao. Swish. Almost at the same time, Yubai's aura fluctuated, and he formed a seal with his hand. Runes flashed, and he started to form a talisman array. I'm in a hurry. Let's not form a talisman array, Lin Weiqi said. Her red dress fluctuated and beautiful runes spurted out like flames. In the next instant, Lin Weiqi's graceful body appeared in front of you by like a bolt of lightning. A palm print wrapped in blazing flames seemed to spread through the air, burning fiercely and directly enveloping Yubai. Yubai's expression changed. He had to give up on forming a talisman array. He formed a palm print in his hand and faced the attack. Bang! There was a dull sound and Yubai's palm print collapsed. The flames on Lin Weiqi's palm print were terrifying. The runes spread, and they seemed to be able to burn the air. They continued to press towards Yubai. You have reached the martial royal realm. At this moment, Yubai seemed to have discovered something. However, it was already too late for him to dodge. The blazing palm landed, destroying his defenses. His body was instantly sent flying back, and when he finally managed to stabilize himself, some blood flowed out from his mouth. I lost. Yubai raised his head and looked at Lin Weiqi. He smiled bitterly. What a special flame. Not far away in the square, Du Xiaofu was also moved by Lin Weiqi's raging flames. That kind of raging flame was not ordinary. Bang! At the same time, Wuma Sheng's body was also knocked back. He slid across the ground and his face was pale. It was difficult for him to fight against Dongli Diao. I have lost. Wuma Sheng raised his head. He could not afford to lose without a fight, but there was no need for him to continue fighting even though he knew that he was no match for him. Dongli Diao's strength was indeed not what he could withstand. As Yubai and Wuma Sheng lost without any suspense, there were only 4 people left on the field. At this moment, in addition to Lin Weiqi and Dongli Diao, there were also Du Xiaofu and Sun Tian. The cheers of the spectators around the square were endless. The names of the 4 people resounded through the clouds. Being able to enter the top 4 was enough to prove their strength. In this world where strength was respected, the strong had always been worshipped and yearned for. It was a kind of fanaticism and pursuit of strength. Looks like it's a little special this time, On the high platform, many of the strong people were moved. Originally, many people had placed Dongli Diao and Lin Weiqi as the favorites to win the competition of the Seven Palaces. However, with Officer Qin's death, everyone knew that Xiaofeng was definitely a strong opponent for Lin Weiqi and Dongli Diao. In the second round, according to the rules of the previous years, the four of you will fight against the last of the Seven Palaces. Lin Weiqi of the Tianshu Palace will fight against Sun Tian of the Alcade Palace. Xiaofeng of the Migres Palace will fight against Dongli Diao. Now, the second round begins. Elder Zhang stood up and looked at the four people on the square. However, he still did not look good. Lin Weiqi straightened her body and glanced at Du Xiaofu and Dongli Diao. Then, she looked at Sun Tian and said, "Let's begin. Then, let me see the raging flame martial vein." Sun Tian looked at Lin Weiqi and did not say anything. An aura of cultivation above the peak of the martial king realm burst out from his body. It vaguely carried the aura of the martial emperor realm. Half martial emperor realm. Lin Weiqi's bright eyes moved slightly and flame-like runes flashed out from her fiery red clothes. Then, "I won't be polite." Sun Tian attacked. His figure flashed and a black rune ribbon appeared in his hand. It instantly pierced through the space and swept towards Lin Weiqi. What an extraordinary black star art! Lin Weiqi stretched out her hand and shook her wrist. Her slender hand grabbed the air and a flame gathered into a handprint. She directly caught the black rune ribbon in her hand. The two of them were on the verge of making a move. "I really want to know how strong the successor of the Weapon Sovereign is. You seem to be not only a spiritual talisman master, but also a martial Dao talisman master." Dongli Diao looked at Du Xiaofu. He could feel that the mysterious young man named Xiaofeng was definitely not just a spiritual talisman master. Xiaofeng's physical strength was definitely not something an ordinary spiritual talisman master could possess. "You're right. Go all out. Otherwise, you won't have many chances to attack." Du Xiaofu looked at Dongli Diao. For the time being, he did not know what Dongli Diao's true form was. However, Du Xiaofu could feel that Dongli Diao's true form was definitely ranked high on the heavenly beast list. The aura on its body was not to be underestimated. It was definitely not below the silver-winged demon eagle and the scarlet cloud dragon. "You're very arrogant, but you have the ability to be arrogant. However, you've only killed official Qin. You're not arrogant enough in front of me." As Dongli Diao's voice faded, his battle robe fluttered and his body leapt out. The pattern on his cloak was like a phoenix spreading its wings. He stretched out his hand and a palm print immediately slapped towards Du Xiaofu. He wanted to gain the initiative by striking first. His aura was violent and vigorous. Du Xiaofu raised his head and punched towards Dongli Diao. It was simple and direct. Bang! The fist print suddenly collided with the former's palm print, causing the square to resound with muffled thunder. The force swept out and dispersed. Du Xiaofu's body swayed slightly before he stabilized his body. Dongli Diao's body staggered back 3 steps. His palm was numb and his eyes were filled with shock. He had the body of a demonic beast, but at this moment, his opponent's strength was unimaginable. Boom! Dongli Diao no longer hid his aura. The stable aura of a beast emperor swept out. He stretched out his hand and a claw print tore through the space. It faintly formed 5 long spatial cracks in the air. With a sonorous sound, it pressed towards Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu punched again. There was a faint purple flame flickering on his fist. It was as fast as lightning and collided with the former's fist. This was the most direct confrontation. He did not care about Dongli Diao's demonic beast body at all. Boom! Dongli Diao's body was pushed back again. His face was much paler. At this moment, the pride in his eyes was replaced by a serious and shocked expression. That Xiaofeng's body is so strong. He actually gained the upper hand in a head-on confrontation with Dongli Diao. On the high platform, the experts from the 7 temples were also astonished. Elder Cloud Leopard of Mizang Temple was even more nervous at this moment. He locked his gaze on the square. "You are indeed qualified to make me use my full strength." Dongli Diao looked at Du Xiaofu. At this moment, he no longer held back his aura. The runes on the surface of his body erupted as if they were going to drown the square. Then, in a very short time, Dongli Diao's body turned into a giant eagle that was more than 1,000 feet long. The giant eagle spread its wings and covered the sky. Its wings emitted white runes like a phoenix. Its body was covered with white clouds, and its feathers were shining. Cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle. Du Xiaofu's eyes were slightly surprised. Dongli Diao's true form was actually a cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle that was ranked above the Xianyun scarlet dragon on the heavenly beast list. It was said that this cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle had the bloodline of the legendary phoenix. Its power was amazing and its bloodline was extraordinarily noble among the demonic beasts. Ku! Dongli Diao's true form screeched. Runes flooded the square and shook the surroundings. Its aura was extremely strong. Just its aura alone was far above Qingguan's. Very strong. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered under his mask. Dongli Condor's true form, the cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor, was indeed extraordinary. The aura of a beast emperor that had just ascended to the beast emperor realm, coupled with the power of the bloodline in its body, could make an ordinary martial emperor realm cultivator retreat. Ku! Dongli Diao's true form pounced on Du Xiaofu. It flapped its wings, and a terrifying wind of runes swept the sky like a storm. If the square had not been restricted by the runes, it would have cracked and exploded. Du Xiaofu looked at Dongli Diao's true form that was sweeping toward him. He waved his hand, and an aura gushed out. His feet touched the ground, and he did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward and wanted to ride on Dongli Diao's true form. Ku! The cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle screeched. Its feathers glowed, and it flapped its wings. A terrifying aura burst out and forced Du Xiaofu to retreat. At the same time, the cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle's eyes were sharp and proud. It had a noble and majestic aura. Its sharp claws seemed to tear the sky apart as it quickly grabbed at Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu made his move. At this moment, his body was extremely small compared to the cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle. However, the aura that burst out of his body directly resisted the cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle. Du Xiaofu shook his arm and blasted out a fist seal. Dazzling talisman patterns gushed out like the stars in the night sky. It carried a kind of vast aura that covered the sky and swept out. The appearance of the fist print caused the space around the square to dim. It was as if it could swallow the light. The night sky was about to appear. The pressure suppressed the sky and made people tremble. Today's update is complete. Chapter 836. Boom! The fist collided with Dongli Diao's sharp claws, destroying its power and suppressing the cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle. Ku! The cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle screeched, the sound waves piercing through the clouds and splitting rocks, causing the space to fluctuate like waves. It was extremely shocking. Then, it swept its wings like a phoenix spreading its wings, fiercely flapping towards Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu waved his fist, bringing along lightning as he directly collided with the attack, showing no fear at all. On the square, Lin Weiqi and Sun Wu were also fighting, but they were drowned out by the fierce battle between Dongli Diao and Du Xiaofu. The huge beast and the fierce young man were fighting fiercely on the square. The sound waves swept across, causing the space to explode, causing the square that was sealed with restrictions to rumble and shake. All the onlookers were dumbfounded and trembled. Dongli Diao's strength was too strong. The cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle's bloodline was so strong that it was the absolute king among the beasts. No matter if it was its speed or the strength of its body, it was unparalleled. However, Xiaofeng was even more shocking. With the strength of his body, his fists were like rain, fiercely fighting against Dongli Diao's cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle. He was not at a disadvantage at all, and was even suppressing Dongli Diao. In the sky above the square, a man and a beast, both of whom were outstanding talents of the younger generation, fought fiercely, shaking the mountains. Ku! The cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle roared. Its huge body was powerful. It was not as fierce as the silver-winged demonic eagle, but it was more noble and moving. The cloud-piercing phoenix blood eagle's claws could tear the space apart, and its wings could move mountains and seas. Every attack had the power to shatter mountains and crack the earth. Du Xiaofu clashed with Dongli Diao. Every time he clashed with Dongli Diao's body, there would be runes filling the sky and muffled thunder. The impact of the collision made countless onlookers tremble. Dongli Diao was very strong, the king among the beasts. However, Xiaofeng was even more shocking. His small physical body was able to erupt with such terrifying energy. To be able to clash with Dongli Diao and not be at a disadvantage, even suppressing him. Dongli Diao's main body screamed. His sharp eyes became more and more serious. He could feel how strong this person was. This was the first person he had ever met in his generation, and this person was also a human. A fierce attack was launched. Dongli Diao attacked with all his strength. Runes erupted and power surged. Du Xiaofu wasn't afraid. He fiercely confronted the enemy head-on. The explosion of energy caused the hearts of those watching from afar to tremble. Is Xiaofeng really just a talisman master? He can actually suppress Dongli Diao with his physical strength. Why do I feel that Xiaofeng is more like a demonic beast? His physical body is even stronger than Dongli Condor's true form, the cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor. In the surrounding mountains, all the onlookers were trembling with fear. On the high platform, the experts from the 7 palaces were also stunned speechless. Elder Cloud Leopard of Mizar Hall had a serious expression. The young master is unfathomable. Elder Zhu Xiu's eyes were as calm as an ancient well. He was extremely shocked. Du Xiaofu was fighting fiercely. He didn't use any trump cards, purely relying on the strength of his physical body. He fought until his blood boiled. Lightning flashed in his eyes and purple flames surged. This was a pure battle. Du Xiaofu's fighting spirit was aroused by Dongli Diao. Du Xiaofu wanted to know how strong his physical body was. It was rumored that the cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor had the bloodline of the legendary phoenix. The power of its bloodline was incomparably tyrannical. The phoenix was a terrifying existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the azure dragon, white tiger, and other supreme beasts in ancient times. Dongli Diao's cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor was very strong. Du Xiaofu had seen its tyrannical strength. It was indeed not inferior to the silver-winged demonic condor and the Xinyun scarlet dragon. Its bloodline power was even stronger. However, Du Xiaofu resisted it. Although he didn't use the power of the golden-winged great rock, his physical body had always been like the golden-winged great rock. Especially after various refinements and baptisms, Du Xiaofu's physical body had become even more terrifying. He was able to resist Dongli Diao directly. Fight! Du Xiaofu shouted. The fighting spirit in his body surged. He waved his fist and purple flames surged. It was like the wings of a purple flame demonic phoenix. It fiercely collided with the wing of the cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor. The purple flames erupted with a blazing aura that seemed to be able to burn everything. It brought with it a great pressure that seemed to be able to suppress the cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor. In the end, it turned into rolling purple flames that wrapped around the wing of the cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor. The blazing flames whistled and covered the sky. Coo! The cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor cried out in pain. It flapped its wings and exploded with runes, extinguishing the purple flames. However, one of its wings was already stained with blood. Its feathers were messy and blood flowed out. Continue! Du Xiaofu shouted. He unconsciously used the wave-like free spirit steps. His movements were unpredictable. Pure physical strength wrapped in thunder and lightning swept out. It was as if a huge thunderball had fallen from the sky and smashed onto Dongli Diao's back. Its elder sister's footwork. Is he with her? At the edge of the square, the bear-like youth looked at Du Xiaofu's footwork in the air with astonishment. Boom! Du Xiaofu's fist fell with the force of thunder. The runes on Dongli Diao's back were struck by lightning. In the end, Dongli Diao spat out blood. Xiaofeng is too strong. On the high platform, the experts from the 7 palaces were also shocked. To be able to injure Dongli Diao with his physical strength, that terrifying strength was too strong. Moreover, Dongli Diao's cultivation level was much higher than Xiaofeng's. If they were at the same cultivation level, Dongli Diao would have been trampled. Is Xiaofeng really human? Dongli Diao's eyes trembled. Xiao Feng's physical strength was not something a human should have. Fight! Du Xiaofu took the opportunity to land on the back of Dongli Diao's Cloud Phoenix Blood Eagle. Ku! Dongli Diao screeched. Runes burst out. It flapped its wings and spun, releasing the most terrifying power. Suppress. Du Xiaofu's fighting spirit was boiling. Lightning flashed on his body, and he was wrapped in runes. He was like a god of war, suppressing with great power. He was like a boulder on Dongli Diao's back. No matter how hard Dongli Diao struggled, it could not move. Bang! During the confrontation, Du Xiaofu stepped forward and sat on Dongli Diao's body. His left hand grabbed the feathers on Dongli Diao's back, and his right hand clenched into a fist. Fist after fist fell down like rain. Du Xiaofu's fists were wrapped in lightning. With the sound of thunder, they continuously landed on Dongli Diao's back. The runes on Dongli Diao's back were shattered. Dongli Diao's body trembled in the air. Coo! At the same time, Dongli Diao's Cloud Phoenix Blood Eagle let out a sharp cry. The runes on its body shot into the sky and finally turned into a white Cloud Phoenix Blood Eagle that was extremely close to a phoenix. It was like a living creature. Phoenix Blood Eagle Shadow, that is Dongli Diao's innate bloodline ability. Dongli Diao has awakened the phoenix blood within its body. On the high platform, Alcade Hall's Radiant Star Elder cried out in alarm. The complexions of many powerhouses changed. That was the strength of Dongli Diao's bloodline. Only by awakening the phoenix blood within its body could Dongli Diao stimulate the strength of its bloodline. Not all cloud-piercing phoenix blood condors were able to awaken the phoenix blood in their bodies. Once the phoenix blood was awakened, the cloud-piercing phoenix blood condor would be infinitely close to the legendary phoenix. The phoenix blood eagle shadow was terrifying. It suppressed Du Xiaofu, emitting a terrifying and resplendent divine light. That terrifying power could affect the heavens and earth. It could move mountains and overturn seas. It was mysterious and terrifying. The pressure was impressive, causing everyone to tremble. Their bloodline souls were suppressed. Du Xiaofu looked up. He also felt a terrifying power. It was tyrannical and extraordinary. Go! Du Xiaofu looked at the phoenix blood eagle shadow. His eyes under the mask flickered with battle intent. He waved his hand, and mysterious runes flickered. Finally, another blade of grass was condensed and shot out. This blade of grass had slender spiritual leaves. It was as if it was real. Mysterious runes flickered, and a pressure suddenly descended from the sky, causing everyone's eyes to tremble. This blade of grass was not inferior to the grass of immortality. It was rarely seen in the world. This blade of grass then turned into a beam of light, erupting with a terrifying power. Like thunder, it shot towards the phoenix blood eagle shadow, immediately suppressing it. Then, the blade of grass seemed to fuse with the phoenix blood eagle shadow. It directly dissolved the terrifying phoenix blood eagle shadow into broken runes. Puchi, Dongli Diao's true body, the cloud phoenix blood eagle shadow, once again spat out blood. Its sharp and proud eyes dimmed, and its aura immediately withered. What kind of profound is that? It's too terrifying. On the high platform, the powerhouses of the 7 halls were so shocked that they were speechless. A blade of grass had actually broken Dongli Diao's phoenix blood eagle shadow's bloodline power. No one could recognize this blade of grass. Xiao Feng's strength was unfathomable, mysterious, and terrifying. Du Xiaofu continued to sit on Dongli Diao's true body, swinging his fists. He was incomparably valiant, ferocious, and domineering. Punch after punch landed. Dongli Diao's back was dripping with blood, and feathers fluttered down. Its huge body was directly crushed and smashed into the square, causing the ground and mountains to shake. Countless people in the surroundings were stunned. Dongli Diao had been defeated so cleanly. He was suppressed to the ground by Qiao Feng. The purple-armored youth floated down from the sky, as if he was a god of war riding a divine bird that had descended to the mortal world. It was a shocking sight. Lin Weiqi had defeated Sun Wu at some point. Her graceful figure looked at the purple-armored youth on Dongli Diao's back, and her beautiful eyes rippled with brilliance. I've lost. Dongli Diao opened his mouth. His eyes withered, and blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. His pride had been destroyed by the youth on his back. That terrifying youth had defeated him with physical strength. He also knew that the youth on his back had not yet reached the Emperor realm. If the youth had also reached the Emperor realm, Dong Li Jiao would have been even less of a match.